Greetings, friends. Welcome to another installment of Into the Necrosphere, and making her return to the show this week is my friend Katy Irizarry, a lady of many talents, including being the senior publicist at Season of Mist Records. She also has a couple of other projects in the offing, some of which we discussed over the course of our conversation. If you were privy to the last one that we had, which I think was when she was on for episode 89, you will know that she's a woman who pulls no punches, and we were throwing some serious haymakers at everything from politics to music to really some pretty personal stuff. But it was a great chat, one I'm very excited about sharing with all of you, and one I'm sure everybody's going to enjoy. If you stick around after that, you will also get the added bonus of my thoughts on the new Corpsegrinder record. And I will do the usual metal news headlines and reacts. Loads of cool new music coming out this week. So I have saved myself from listening to any of those singles, and you will get my first impressions of all of it later on in the podcast. If you're new to the show, of course, make sure that you knee drop the subscribe button into oblivion on your platform of choice if you've not already done so, whether that's on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, or whatever other platform you prefer to consume your podcasts on. You can also check out the Into the Necrosphere Teespring store if you want to show some love to the show and pick up some merchandise. And remember to follow me on the socials. I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Links in the description to the podcast. Next week, I'm back with Trevor Ports of Arborea. That was a really fun music-orientated conversation. I think I mentioned it on last week's podcast as well. But, you know, if you just want to see two dudes geeking out on fucking metal for an hour and a half, you're going to have a good time with that one. For now, however, I am going to welcome back to the podcast, making her triumphant return, Katy Irizarry. So what's been going on, ma'am? It's been like, I feel like there's two things that are different since we last spoke. Number one, the fortunes of this podcast has turned exponentially, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But secondly, you know, I feel like the world is in a slightly different place as well since our last catch up.
Well, yeah, it is, because, you know, now France is having an election. We're having some primaries here. So now things are obviously changing because there's a reason for them to change.
Yeah. Well, it's I said at the start of the year, I predicted this was going to be a year where things were going to get really, really crazy, because I feel like as these woke forces are beginning to lose their control over the population to the degree that they are, they're going to lash out. You know, the analogy I used at the time was the snake sailing through the tall grass is far less dangerous than the snake who's just had its tail chopped. And I feel like I'm kind of starting to see that already. You know, a great example of that is all this crazy shit that's happening in Ontario at the moment. I literally just read now on Zero Hedge that they've got military guys with sniper rifles trained at the truckers. There's, you know, people going in with assault rifles. Obviously, a day before, there's, you know, been news coming out about how they're freezing people's bank accounts and things like that. I mean, you know, I kind of jokingly said this to somebody, but they didn't even freeze Jeffrey Epstein's bank account. Ghislaine Maxwell's bank account wasn't frozen. This fucking Quintez Martinez scumbag, I mean, he's literally shoot somebody, is out on bail the next day. No repercussions. But, you know, a couple of truckers say, we don't want to take the vaccine. And it's, you know, they literally get treated like the fucking Taliban.
No, they get treated worse than the Taliban, because at least the Taliban was left behind weapons and
that's true as well. They were left behind $90 billion worth of stuff with a goodie.
Exactly. Yeah. I actually read today that they're taking away now pets and children from these people. They're trying now to take away their pets and have them rehome. They're trying to get children taken away.
Not rehome. Did you see the actual post from the government? So they said they're gonna remove your pets, and if alternative arrangements have not been made within 8 days, the pets will be deemed relinquished. And what I think what people have interpreted by that is, once they're deemed relinquished, it's Sugar Candy Mountain.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to be put down. Yeah, no, I believe that. And it's like, how is this? I mean, have there been acts of violence, yes, but who have been committing those acts of violence? There was the one individual who turned out to be Antifa, not affiliated with the truckers, completely against the truckers, who ran people over. When that happened in Charlottesville, everyone was screaming about it and talking about it, as well they should be.
Yeah.
Because a woman was killed, absolutely should not have been killed by a sick person who absolutely no way should that have been justified. But why does no one care now in this circumstance when this person actually hurt more people?
Yeah. The thing is, does the mind not rebel either when people look at this and go, if the government is this vociferously against something like this, is it beyond them to send someone in there waving a swastika flag? Or is it beyond them to, I think they found some other anti-Semitic pamphlet, which is dated to 2 months ago and, is completely unconnected, but would it be beyond... Well, I was about to say, would it be beyond bad actors to distribute that kind of shit around and then have the news go, oh, look what we found, proof these people are... I mean, they called them... It was literally like they took out the woke 10 commandments and said, okay, I'm going to choose 1, 3, 5, and 7. Let's throw it at them and see if it sticks.
Yeah, actually, they did that here with the Lincoln Project. They were fully exposed for it. And I just want to preface everything that we're saying right now. Look it up, please. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Jackie's word for it. Please look these things up, because I feel there's this culture where I really don't believe anyone should just believe what I'm saying because I'm saying it. I think you should hear what I'm saying and use that as a way to now further investigate if what I'm saying is true or not. And that goes for everybody. And I feel there's this culture now of just someone I like says this, or I heard this somewhere, so it's true. This is true, but again, don't take my word for it. Look it up. But this happened. Obviously, there was the big Virginia elections this year, which, for those who aren't aware, and not in the United States, basically you have blue states, which are the liberal Democratic states, and red states, which are the Republican and the more conservative states. And Virginia had been a blue state. And the mayor, the governor there had been having children, forcing kids to be masked. And there was sexual assaults reported in their gender neutral bathrooms, and parents being labeled domestic terrorists for speaking out against, the COVID policies. And it really got crazy. And ultimately, when the election happened, everyone said, even before the election, our vice president, Kamala Harris, had said that everyone needs to keep an eye on Virginia because what happens there will probably determine the next presidential election. And what happened was they turned red and they voted conservative. And while this was all going on and this big election is happening, they had a rally for the conservative Republican governor who was running against the other one. And there was all of these Proud Boy protesters there with like the tiki torches and baseball hats and like threatening signs, one of whom was Black, which was already a red flag. Like, how are you a white supremacist? Yeah. Well, people exposed them to be actual actors and affiliated with Project Lincoln. And it was exposed that Project Lincoln sent these people there. And again, it sounds like, well, you're just trying to defend this. No, if it were the other way around and it turned out, yeah, no, those people really were there with a racist intent or were supporting this governor because they're racist, it'd be one thing. But so now when I see this happen, exactly what you said, where there's this one group of Nazis and a small group of people and the same photo and the same people being circulated over and over and over again, that's the primary image. First of all, whether it's those people are legitimately there for that purpose or not isn't indicative of why everyone else is there. But also at the same time, I have to wonder, are they just there because this is like some type of a false flag operation? Because it's happened before.
Yeah, well, not just happened before, but it seems like a well they are intent to keep dipping in on as much as they possibly can. Virginia was an interesting case because I kind of felt like I agree that, I rarely agree with Kamala Harris, but I feel like that set the tone for what's coming. And it's kind of, it was in stages that all of this happened, right? First, there was the ambiguities around COVID. So, then you were supposed to first masks didn't work, then masks, were mandated. And if you didn't wear it, you were scum. And then, they weren't going to mandate vaccines, or there was going to be no COVID passports. Then suddenly, okay, now there's COVID passports. And they started I think that's where people started to get resentful. And then inflation rates started going up, even when the press and the current administration were telling people inflation's actually a good thing. It shows that they literally said it shows the economy is coming back. So, people start feeling the pinch in their pockets and then their quality of life, which is that's the first thing you don't fuck with when it comes to, if regardless of which side of the aisle you sit on, as a politician, you don't fuck with somebody's wallet. You especially don't fuck with someone's kids. And when all this crazy shit started coming out in Virginia about how they'd been maintaining Facebook groups where they were discussing dissenting parents, and I think it wasn't the previous mayor, it might have been the previous governor, but somebody was actively kind of referring to parents that said, I don't want CRT taught to my children at school as terrorists. Mm-hmm. People started sussing that, and they were like, no, fuck this. Not we're not going to put up with this anymore. And there wasn't a big fuss. There wasn't a big, hullabaloo, protesting, riots, anything like that. I mean, they just voted in their droves. And I think Virginia got the highest number of Republican seats in an election in history. I think they got something like 40 additional seats. I'm not 100% sure of the exact numbers, but 40 seats over what they've previously got at like a historic peak. And so Youngkin got in as governor, and then Winsome Sears became the first ever, I think, black or female black lieutenant general.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And obviously they're not going to celebrate that, because really she's just a white supremacist in with a different skin color and a different gender.
I mean, that's what people were saying. It was amazing the way everyone loves to jump and make this into a race thing and a gender thing. Like, there was a whole controversy with the election, like primarily like more white women this year voted Republican than more white women the last time, or something like that. And it became like a whole big thing. And it's like, why was that one stat singled out? In general, that whole state voted more. It wasn't just white women. It was just a very weird way of putting things. And still, men voted more than women in general. Like, it was just a very weird way to just present this and make a whole drama about it. And that was one of the things with Winsome Sears, where people were like, oh, she's just brainwashed by the patriarchy. And it's like, no, why does it have to be that?
Brainwashed by the Nazis.
Yeah. It's like brainwashed by the white patriarchy or whatever it is. And it's like, why? And to me, that's so demoralizing. If you claim to be a feminist and you're saying that here's a woman who busted her ass and worked her way to the top, and you're demeaning her.
Yeah, I mean, like she really is the definition of a self-made woman. I mean, I can't remember everything about her, but I'm curious as we're talking about her. So yeah, so she's a veteran. She's Jamaican born originally, so she came over as an immigrant. I'm not exactly sure when. I've seen a couple of her speeches, and she's definitely she's a very interesting woman, and I think she's, again, I think if you went on this purely on principle, you could surely concede that even if she sits on the other side of the aisle to what someone else might vote for, it's a fucking amazing achievement what she's done.
Absolutely, it really is. And again, it's not being celebrated. It's being turned into a negative. And the few people like us who do appreciate this, people spin that how they want to spin it.
Yeah, well, you're evil for liking those things, but it's
it
definitely for me.
Celebrate a black woman in power. Like, it's so backwards, this way of thinking.
But it definitely Virginia to me kind of set the pace for where things are going, and like, I think that has been what has spawned all this crazy shit around Joe Rogan, for example, because I kind of feel this panic now in advance of the midterms, because surely internal polling must tell them that they're in real trouble. I mean, they've got one stat that I heard was something like 30 Democratic House members are set to retire, so they won't run again. That typically tells you they're cautious about what's coming as far as the election results are concerned. And then you can also look at it in we spoke about Joe Rogan, but you can look at it in terms of media consumption patterns. So, the three biggest, kind of biggest semi-news shows, or at least media shows in America, or sources of media: Joe Rogan number 1, Tucker Carlson number 2, Greg Gutfeld number 3. that should be eye-watering for people. There was one stat that I heard. I don't know what the sample size of this poll was, but Democrats aged 25 to 34, their number one most watched news program is Tucker Carlson. So, I mean, when you've lost the youngs to Tucker, then you know you are fucked.
Yeah, and I mean, he's another interesting character where a lot of these people give a one-sided story, and he really has been open-minded to not only call his own to the carpet. Like, there's been times he's absolutely called out Ted Cruz for saying really messed up shit. I feel like the most recent time he did that was Ted Cruz, when he was calling like the January 6th, calling them terrorists. And he's like,
oh my God,
we're not terrorists. And Tucker called him out. And I'm like, he's not afraid to hide behind his bipartisan values. If he sees someone saying something he doesn't agree with, he's going to call you out regardless. And then he has other people on. Like, my favorite thing is he's always interviewing, like he's had him on like 5 or 6 times now, Lucian Greaves from the Satanic Temple. And that could not be two more different types of people. And it's amazing seeing how confused Tucker is, because Lucian is so well spoken and very smart and intelligent and just very endearing. And you could see he just doesn't even really know what to make of it. And even commenters were like, I'm scared that this satanic man is so smart. And even though I don't necessarily agree with a lot of Lucian's views or anything like that, I think here's someone who has a Christian audience, and he's trying to create a satanic panic, but kind of tripping over himself that it's becoming like a parody. Like, it's just, yeah.
No, I will confess, I find Tucker quite entertaining. I was about to say I don't agree with everything he says, but no. I find him very entertaining, and he's like, when he's got you on the ropes, he's sharp. I mean, you don't want to go into a debate with that guy unprepared. Like, I mean, that the one that I immediately thought of when you mentioned Ted Cruz was when he interrogated Ted Cruz about the terrorist comment about January 6th. And I mean, he basically opened it and said, you did you call them terrorists, at such and such a time? He says, no, that's not what you said. And then the barrage began.
Walked him back, and it's like he's an equal opportunist. And exactly, I don't agree with everything he says. I mean, I always feel very politically homeless still on the scale of things, because even though I find myself agreeing more and more with certain things when it comes to the right, there's still huge things, and we've talked about this before, that I can absolutely never get on board with. All of the hardcore Christianity, the values that come with that, especially when it comes to being pro-life over being pro-choice, and the way they feel about same-sex marriage and things like that, I don't ever agree with. So there's plenty of times that I'm just like, oh, these people again, really. But at the same time, at the core of it, when none of that would even matter when all of our other rights are going to be taken away. We're not going to have the First Amendment. We're not going to have this. It's just, you're not going to have anything at that point.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I've said this many times on the podcast before. Like, I grew up in a house where I was taught you're going to be disappointed by a politician no matter who they are, no matter what side of the aisle they sit on. The best thing you can do is, in your own mind, educate yourself on, number one, all of the issues that are important to you, have a position on those, and then assess of these 2, 3, 4, 5 candidates, who's the person that's most closely aligned to what I think. You will never find somebody who you're 100% in alignment with. Go with the person you're most closely aligned to based on your order of importance when it comes to different issues. That's who you vote for. That's the best outcome. I find it so crazy. Like, when Joe Rogan is guilty of this as well. Like, he'll often turn around and say, well, such and such is a nice guy, so I would have voted for him. It's like, you can't vote for someone based on whether you think they're a nice guy or not. I mean, Barack Obama was a nice guy, but this will be controversial to a lot of people listening to this. I think he's a fucking atrocious president. I thought George Bush was an atrocious president, and I thought Bill Clinton was an absolutely abysmal president.
He was probably arguably the worst of all, really, well, other than Joe Biden. He takes the cake at this point, because look at everything that's happened. Yeah. I mean, there's you probably watched JP Awakens on YouTube, or Awaken with JP.
And no, I don't.
Oh my gosh, you have to follow this. It's so good. This dude is total parody, like leftist parodies.
Oh,
And
I know who you're talking about now. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
long redheaded guy.
Yeah.
And on there's one he does on how Joe Biden voters defend Joe Biden. And one of my favorite things that he says, and I have been known to repeat this, sorry I've ripped you off, JP, is name one thing that Joe Biden has built back better other than the Taliban.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, I find an awful lot of people who are very pro Biden are very quiet now. Because it's like, how much more can this fucking moron mess up? I mean,
Yeah.
he's not as big of a weasel as Trudeau. I'll give him that, but he's still a moron.
To be fair, I don't even necessarily blame Joe Biden. I feel bad for this man because I don't believe he is with the rest of us. He seems to have a serious cognitive disability, and I would never be one to hate or feel a certain way for someone. But to me, what's criminal is that people are allowing this man to do this, that they're not letting him age in grace, and that there's the forces behind him who are chattering in his ear and puppeteering him and taking advantage of him in that state. And it's not that like he was a great politician or anything before that. I mean, we were tweeting before, and I mentioned about how something just came out recently and no one said a word about it, that rewound to a time when Joe Biden gave a eulogy to a known huge KKK leader and like called him his like dear friend. And like no one says anything about that. No one cares. But so I'm not saying he by no means was he a good politician prior, but now I look at this man and I'm like, you are literally have a cognitive disability. You should be getting care, but people are puppeteering you and propping you on a stage and giving you these horrible ideas.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the thing is, you can look at the UK and it's equally horrific. I mean, the worst thing is we're supposed to have a conservative government. I mean, this government is about as conservative as the progressive wing of the Democrat Party. I mean, it is just insane what they're doing. Like, I agreed with them leaving the European Union on the provision that there are people that are capable of managing that transition out. Like, I don't agree with the European Union, but equally, I also don't agree with leaving something if you're not going to manage it properly. Like, there's certain things that they needed to do. And like, it almost seems like at every single crossroads of the right choice and the fucking worst choice, they go, all right, let's see how much further we can fuck things up. Over-regulating the economy, overtaxing people, making it harder for any business to come here. Like, any multinational company has this big vested interest in doing business in the UK. It's fucking insane. And it's getting to a point where I've said to my girlfriend a couple of times now, actually now fiance, but I've said to her a couple of times now, if it weren't for the animals, for the fact that I've got my daughter here, this is where I would have started thinking of packing my shit and moving. Like, I just don't see anything positive happening in this country anymore, because the party that's supposed to be the party of small government, low tax, all the things that I'm aligned to, they don't seem to believe in it. And the alternative are a bunch of fucking anti-Semitic communists. And I can't vote for them, but under no circumstances will I vote for them. So, at least, like, the one thing that I've always thought about America is at least you guys have this you have one advantage in that, because there's such a big separation between the states and how they're run. You've got people can make a choice, right? If you're economically mobile, you can make a choice. You can look at California and go, I enjoy living amongst the homeless with loads of drug needles all strewn about me, loads of crime, people being able to steal and shoplift without cops doing anything about it. Or I'm gonna manage the humidity and the mosquitoes and the fucking alligators. I'm moving to the free state of Florida. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what's happening. And that's a huge benefit of living here and being self-governed. I mean, even though this country, Lord knows, has our challenges, and I would say is the most close. I mean, first of all, this whole country was founded out of Great Britain's asshole. So we are the most closely related countries, whether anyone wants to admit it or not. And even when it comes to our political turmoil, there is so much commonality there. But yeah, it's being so I actually recently left Philadelphia, and even the cities are so much different than the states. So like where I am now in this particular area, which is not far out of Philly, I'm maybe about like 50 miles outside of Philly, There's no mask requirements anywhere. There's no none of these same, no vaccines, dine in, even concerts. Like I'm going to see Cannibal Corpse in Reading, Pennsylvania on I think it's Monday. And they're not going to ask for a vaccine card or anything. But if that show was in Philly, they would. So there's all these little advantages that you escape certain things in certain areas, and the further you leave cities, and then the further you leave those states. And believe me, depending on what happens with the next election, I might be absolutely making my way to Florida.
We might be joining Obituary out in Tampa.
I know, it's funny. I really want to go to Miami because I just love Miami the most. Miami doesn't feel like America at all. It feels like another country. Everyone there is beautiful. The food's amazing. Oh, I love Miami, but A, I can never afford it, and B, no concerts ever come down that way. Like sometimes they do, but I'd have to go to like Orlando or Tampa or like Jacksonville.
Yeah. I just on the topic of Florida, I think one other poll that I heard the other day, 92% of Hispanic people living in Florida disapprove of the Biden administration. I was in my car, I was like, Viva!
Well, that's what people don't realize either. Most of the Hispanic community in Florida are immigrants who escaped Cuba. Florida, it's a sanctuary. And as long as you can make it to Florida, you are officially United States citizen, or can now be fast tracked to be a citizen. And they can't touch you anymore in Cuba. And that's why they usually come here, because it's the easiest route to the States, and they typically settle in Florida. And they just escaped a serious dictatorship. And that's why they're more inclined at this point to be against what's happening right now in our country under this administration.
Have you seen the memes that have come out of Trudeau and how similar he looks to Fidel Castro?
No, I actually have not seen those yet. I've seen quite a few.
I'll send it to you. It's fucking hysterical.
Please do, yeah.
Yeah, but just on the topic of Cannibal Corpse, you were pretty outspoken about the whole Chris Barnes debacle, and I spoke about it on my news segment a little while back, and I've spoken about it in this sort of thing invariably for a while. But the one thing that always rubs me the wrong way about these like quote unquote legends, and Chris Barnes is in that group, Nocturno Culto is in that group for sure. Thomas Gabriel Fisher, people whose classic contributions to the scene and to music I greatly respect and I very much enjoy, but I take real offense to the way that they lay into the newer generation, because in part because of how insulting I think it is to people who sincerely are working very, very hard to honor those, and it's not just those three, but those three men's legacy. When Nocturno Culto turned around and said black metal's lost its spirit, it's like, bro, when last have you done anything that is even close to being on I mean, without people being blinded by the logo, because that is, I mean, let's be frank now, that is exactly what's happening. But if they weren't blinded by the logo, would you guys even be signed? Beyond, I would arguably say hate them. Not a fucking chance. Thomas Gabriel Fisher, Triptychon is very good, but I mean, the last Triptychon record was 2015. What has he done since then? And Chris Barnes, I mean, Jesus Christ. It's like, he put out the closest thing to Weird Al Yankovic making a death metal album that I've ever heard in my life, with that last piece of shit 6 Feet Under record. I mean, again, no label, there's not a single label on the planet that would put that crap out if it weren't called 6 Feet Under. No one.
Oh, absolutely not. Or not if Chris Barnes wasn't in it, because he is still a legend and a legacy. And that's something that people cannot erase, which is something you and I have talked about before, because people love to pretend that people's contributions suddenly don't matter anymore just because they said or did something they don't like. But of course, we can't sit here and say he didn't. But that's it. He's at this point now, he is out of gas. He's washed up. The last songs that he put out with 6 Feet Under were so bad that Metal Blade actually disabled comments because
I remember that actually
getting roasted. Like that became everyone knew about it because it became such a huge topic of conversation, because it's not something that labels in general do unless it's really bad. And it was just, and that song was so legendarily bad. Like that song had a ton of listens because people wanted to hear how bad it was. So in a way, from a marketing and PR perspective, like I could kind of see that label actually, that's a smart move. You're not signing that band because they're good. You're signing them because they're going to get clicks because of how bad they are at the same time. But yeah, I hate this gatekeeper mentality because to me, I feel like as someone who's a part of this genre and as someone who has laid a foundation in this genre, even if you haven't, but especially if you did, you should want to see this genre stay alive and transcend generations and generations. And the only way you're going to do that is if you also keep bands from these generations alive, because the fans are going to die when there's no more, sure, Metallica will always be a band people are going to listen to. People are always going to listen to Slayer. People are always going to listen to these bands. But at the same time, there's no growth there. They're not, it's going to stay and it's never going to grow. It's never going to evolve unless you keep having new bands and new genres and you keep passing the torch. So this is what bothers me. Even it bothers me on a small level, like Slayer, who never took out when they were on their final couple of tours, their last couple of years, never took out an emerging artist. They never did. They could have said, you know what, we're leaving and we want to introduce our fan base, knowing how healthy and ravenous they are to fresh young blood. They could have taken out Power Trip. They could have taken out Gate Creeper. I mean, there were so many bands they could have taken out, and they didn't. They took out Lamb of God and Phil Anselmo.
Yeah. Well, they did take out, in fairness, although they are themselves old legends, but Obituary, Napalm Death. I thought it was cool that those guys got the opportunity, and I saw Obituary open for them, and they fucking ripped. I mean, they were really, really cool. But Napalm Death is a good example of a band that tries to take out new bands. Obituary is a good example of a band that takes out new bands, and I kind of contend with a theory that the bands that are, that have done this for a while, like, that are 20, 30 years into this game, that are the best and that are still making music that is truly relevant and truly interesting, are the ones that never stop being fans themselves. We're recording this on the day that the new Immolation record came out, and I spoke to Ross a couple of weeks ago. I mean, that dude is still seriously into this music. He loves this music. He loves new stuff coming out. He's not, the sort of guy that goes, oh, there was nothing good released after 1992. I mean, you can hear in their music that they pay attention to what's going on externally. But, you mentioned Slayer. Kerry King is another example. I remember that guy ragging on bands as far back as when Chaos AD came out. I specifically remember, because I was such a big fan of Chaos AD, how disappointed I was as I can't remember, like 13, 14-year-old, reading in a Guitar World magazine. Like, he was talking about how shit the record is. It's a real left turn for them. I was like, are you fucking crazy? This is one of the best albums ever.
Meanwhile, speaking of Sepultura, Max Cavalera is another one who is constantly championing new artists, younger bands. And he has his own podcast, and he's always taking, whether it's a lesser known underground band that's a little bit older or a younger, newer emerging artist. I love that. But yeah, and then you have people like Kerry King who are just constantly shitting on new music and are not allowing this genre to reach new people. And they don't realize you're not just gatekeeping yourself or gatekeeping your fans, you are gatekeeping your legacy. Yeah.
You're making yourself look stupid, I think. Because again, as I said, if you're like, for me, maybe it's in part because I was about to say, I think it's because I've gotten to know so many of these people and become friends with them, but I don't even think it's. I think it's because I take the time to discover new music, and I hear how great some of the new stuff is that's coming out. I spoke about Panzerfaust, and I mentioned this to Brock when he was on the podcast. That first track off of Sons of Perdition Chapter 2 is, it's the most fucking badass, gnarly black metal track, but it gives me a lump in my throat when I hear it because it is so fucking good. So, like, just close to extreme music perfection. And then you hear somebody like, you hear a record like Eternal Hails, and the fucking idiot who made that wants to tell me that has lost, that doesn't have the spirit. Fuck off, man.
Right, exactly. Right. It's like, who are you to say anything? Especially because it's these are people who they've lost their spirit. They've not evolved. They have not put out a good record in 10, 20, sometimes 30 years, depending on who it is. And yeah, and Chris Barnes is one of the biggest offenders, of course, of this, as we've seen. And I don't know specifically, maybe someone else here does, and I missed something, but I don't think I've ever realized yet which podcast triggered him so badly. but I have the suspicion that it involved because I saw Travis Ryan's name getting thrown around a lot, and Oli, of course, Oliver from Archspire. So I feel like those are two of the artists that he was threatened by.
No, it wasn't actually that. There was it was like a Knotfest podcast, and they did this roundtable. It was George Corpsegrinder, trying to think who else. The dude from I think his name is Trevor from Black Dahlia Murder. I'm not a Black Dahlia Murder fan, so I don't care about this stuff. A dude
Trevor
from
cool. I will tell you, I don't like their music, but Trevor, he lived in New York for years. He is an awesome dude. I will tell you that.
Yeah, anytime I've seen an interview with him, he seems genuinely nice. But I've just never. I've seen them live a couple of times. I've just that's not really my kind of vibe.
Not my kind of music either, but yeah.
No. It lacks,
we're not talking
what it lacks is evil. that's the main. I don't like music that sounds to me like I could whistle the tune in the shower, and I don't want that sort of thing. So, but anyway, I think it was that, and it was like I watched a bit of the podcast. It was it was typical kind of navel gazing nonsense, which I'm not really a big fan of, but I get there's an audience for that. It's kind of the same as this World Metal Congress thing, which I also think is just, I personally think it's dumb. I don't like it, but it doesn't make me like people who've been on those episodes that they've posted any less. I mean, Barney has been on there many times from Napalm Death. I still a fucking Napalm Death nut hugger as like, and I will be till my dying day, which is why I'm scared to get him on the podcast. I'm scared we have an argument, and I'm like, I can never listen to Napalm Death again.
Oh no.
I don't think we will. I said this to Brock as well. Like, I think people mustn't get it twisted when they listen to this show. I may come across as though I'm very opinionated from time to time, but some of the people that I enjoy talking to most are way to the left politically. And I said this to somebody the other day. Someone who works for me. I've told the story, but I'll repeat it to you. But she is, she's LGBT. She is like major activist on the left. I said to her, like, you and I are diametrically opposed when it comes to politics, even though we've discovered since, I think, probably a couple of commonalities. And I did say to her a couple of times, like, you sure there's not a conservative in you just waiting to come out? She's like, we're diametrically opposed. I said, but every single time I talk to you, I find myself thinking about things, even if my opinion doesn't change, but just thinking about things with a slightly different perspective. And I said, I want you to know very sincerely, I truly appreciate that. And I really value it. And, she was actually on the verge of leaving. So I said, I'm really going to miss that. So for me, like, I don't mind people having a different opinion. What I mind is people being militant about it and obnoxious about it, because I'm not like that. If you disagree with me, that's fine. That's just life. We can talk about stuff that we can agree on, and you can talk to me about stuff that we disagree on, because I'm probably going to take your opinion into consideration and go, that's an interesting way of thinking about it.
I know, I agree. And I think that's one of the reasons why, you and I connect, because we both have this kind of way of thinking. I am not angry if someone has a different opinion. Some of my best friends are on the totally different end of the spectrum. And that does not make me think any differently of them or any less of them. What I care about is they're a good friend to me, and we could laugh together, and we have a good time together, and they have my back. And that's what I care about. I don't really care how they voted or how they feel politically. And like you said, it's nice to have people with different opinions and have these conversations, because even if in the end, maybe I still believe what I believe and you believe what you believe, it's nice to hear another opinion. And I do learn things. And there's been times I realized I am wrong about something, or I didn't know about something, and then someone told me about it. I look it up and it's like, I had no idea and I'm mistaken. And these are healthy conversations. I'm not perfect. I claim to know nothing. We've talked about this before as well, where, I live in the unknown. I don't sit here and say either way, yes, I know for sure that this election was rigged, but I can sit here and say I know enough to doubt that it was an honest election, or I've read enough to have a reasonable doubt about certain things in general. And but there is this other mentality of people who believe that because I think differently of them, I'm evil, or I think differently from them and that suddenly fits me in one particular box.
You're
And
basically aligned to Adolf Hitler himself.
exactly, I'm
Yeah.
basically like, yeah, like the Aryan race personified. Like
Yeah.
it's ridiculous the way that this way of thinking is. And there are people who also won't welcome a difference of opinion or believe that their opinions are facts and aren't open to seeing another perspective or seeing, oh, I'm wrong. I mean, the CDC, perfect example, came out right at the beginning of the year and we're like, actually, just kidding. I know we like told everyone to wear cloth masks for the past 2 years and we muzzled our kids, but it turns out they don't actually work.
Doesn't really do anything. Yeah.
I know we kept telling you it worked. And here were all these doctors and all these experts and all these people that came out and kept saying that exact same thing. And they were censored and they were bullied offline and they were called terrorists and they lost their jobs. They lost their families. They were threatened. They were doxxed. And now the CDC says it. And even then, instead of people being like, wow, those other people were right, they're still like, oh, I'm going to still wear my mask anyway.
Yeah. Well, you and I spoke the last time you were on, yeah, about you mentioned that you're taking the vaccine and started fucking around with your menstrual cycles.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of talk about that at the time, and everyone was like, "No, it's nothing. It's just nonsense. It's a complete coincidence." Again, recently, shock horror, it starts coming out that, hey, by the way, it does happen. And then they kind of twisted it and said, well, even if it does interfere with your menstrual cycle, you should still take the vaccine because it's good for you. Lockdown, same thing. That study by Johns Hopkins that just came out now said no meaningful impact on COVID infection rates. So there's an awful lot of stuff, and this is why the whole Joe Rogan thing was so amusing to me, and it was amusing on a number of levels, right? Number one, you've got it gets started by fucking Neil Young, who has been an advocate for marijuana legalization for a long time, which I don't smoke weed, but I'm fully in favor of legalizing it. But you want to talk about a substance where there's been medical misinformation spread and like so-called consensus science about it for fucking years. I mean, people at one point were acting like you were going to turn into a flesh-eating zombie once you smoke a joint. So surely you would be able to have some degree of empathy with somebody who goes, I'm not so sure about this. I'm not going to just accept what is presented to me as the consensus science. And I might question a few things. The other thing, Bill Maher said this as well. If anyone has been spreading misinformation, it's the medical industrial complex and the mainstream media, because you get it right, or sorry, you get it wrong so often. And then when it comes time to apologize, or when it comes time to own your mistake, you refuse, and then you act like it never happened.
Right. They double down. They act like it never happened. I mean, again, going back to Joe Rogan, everyone's saying, oh, he had on, first of all, the people he had on were not like Joe Schmoes off the street. Like he had on world renowned, award winning virologists and cardiologists and actual certified, respected doctors.
People who were involved in the creation of the technology behind the vaccine.
Exactly. Ones who were actually involved in the mRNA or whatever technology. But so that aside, the fact that he's talking to experts and people are acting like he's just getting this off the back of a cereal box or whatever they're saying, you now have that he actually, again, exactly what we're speaking to, has on so many other people who have a totally different opinion of him. And there was most notably CNN's chief medical correspondent, Sanjay Gupta. And he came on and he is vehemently pro-vaccine. And of course, there was a lot of moments that he and Rogan did not see eye to eye, and Sanjay said X, Y, and Z, and Rogan, debated him. I read by this. It wasn't something he just whatever. But one of the things that to take away from that was he addressed CNN's reporting of when Joe Rogan came out about using ivermectin, and Sanjay Gupta straight up agreed that they were absolutely wrong and should never have said it was only a horse dewormer, because it can also be used virally. And again, there's no one knows this, or they don't care, or they're turning a blind eye to it, or they're acting like that's not real. CNN just admitted to spreading misinformation. Joe Rogan interviewed someone with a totally different perspective than his own. And it's like, that just goes unnoticed. But, he has on, and again, the guests he has on, legitimate virologists, cardiologists. And it's like, no, those people are wrong.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's not like he invited the renowned plumber Robert Malone to come and talk to you about vaccines. And the thing is also, if he's going to be I mean, people were literally saying, I think there was a woman on CNN that was claiming this, the morons from The View, they'll always claim something like this. But I mean, they were literally claiming that he's killing people in their thousands because of the misinformation he's spreading. How come after Sanjay Gupta was on, people didn't go, well, I'm getting vaccinated. If I wasn't going to be vaccinated before, after I heard it on Joe Rogan that Sanjay Gupta, he sounds like a switched on cat, I'm going to get vaccinated.
Right. Because the same man just came out and agreed that the staff at CNN put out actual false medical information. And no one did anything to rectify it. Like, I mean, he was again like a deer in headlights. Like, I don't know why they did that, but they shouldn't have. Like,
there's that Japanese non-clinical study that's just come out now that shows that ivermectin is has some degree of benefit if you have COVID. And the thing for me is just the way people think about this. It's such low resolution thinking. It's that people can't seem to wrap their head around the idea that there is a gray area in all of this. So with the vaccine, for example, I said this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, you can take the vaccine as I did and still have a degree of skepticism about it, because historically, Big Pharma and the government don't have my best interests at heart. They've proven that time and time again. So, if I take it and I go, well, I've taken it because I want to travel, but frankly, had I not needed to travel, would I have gotten it? No. I personally don't see how that makes me some sort of science denier. I'm not turning around saying the fucking earth is flat. I'm just saying historically, these people have been caught out and proven wrong over and over and over again. I mean, Neil Young made a record about fucking Monsanto, and he can't seem to get his head around the fact that maybe Pfizer is full of shit. So, but the thing is, it's like that about everything. It's like that about politics too. You can see it now with the Durham investigation, the indictments starting to roll down. People are still holding on to this Russian collusion shit. Like, it's real. It's like, guys, it's been disproven now to such a degree. And the literally the only thing that you have to kind of argue against it is a fucking Vanity Fair article that Hillary tweeted that was basically a rebuttal by her lawyer.
Right.
It's like you can't then look at that and go, well, case closed. Right. Hillary's lawyer says it's not. It didn't happen. I mean, you guys are probably jurors in California, because that's why all these guys are getting off all the time. It's like they stood there like this guy, machine gunned down 20 people in Compton. Well, his lawyer says he didn't do it, so case closed. Let's go to lunch. So it's insane to me that no one can take an objective view of things anymore. Like, there's one thing that I was, because I haven't recorded the interstitials yet for the Brock Van Dyke podcast, but I said to him at one point, and I can't remember if he agreed on it, but I said, like, if you look at it from a pure policy perspective and you remove the rhetoric and you remove the craziness, a lot of Trump's policy was actually quite centrist. There wasn't huge amounts of fucking far right fascism that people pretend there is. There was less than there is now. There's certainly less than there is in Canada. But you don't have to like the man or think that you want to hang out with him over the weekend to go. Things like opportunity zones in impoverished neighborhoods. That wasn't a bad thing. Tax cuts, not a bad thing. He managed to reach full unemployment without any inflation, unlike now. But it seems to be like if you agree with a single thing that he did, even if it was the way that he swiveled his toothbrush in the morning, that's wrong. You're immediately a Nazi.
Well, first of all, listen, do not underestimate Joe Biden. He's giving away free crack pipes. All right. He's doing a lot. Oh my God,
that was funny. That was fucking brilliant.
Peppermint Patty coming out there and being like, oh no, we're just sending people kits that protect against HIV. And when someone was like, well, what do those kits have? And they're just like, like chapstick and alcohol swabs.
I'm trying to find I think it's Jack Procheck who posted something about how if the government is going to get involved in the crack game, America is going to be fully sober within 6 months.
Well, America just lost its biggest heroin dealer with, severing ties with Afghanistan. So they got to figure it out now.
I was about to say they're fucked now. So.
Yeah, got to figure it out.
It's just, again, like I said, I'm just what I've watched in the last couple of years just unfurl with amusement is like, can none of you just take an objective look at what's going on and go, okay, I agree with this, I agree with this, I don't agree with this. Surely it's not that hard.
Right. And that's what it is. It's they're not taking an objective look. And again, you don't even have to sit here and say, I know for sure what this is. Because I could sit here, like I said, and say, I really don't know, because everything is so disorienting and you're getting two sides of every story. But there's no shame in saying I don't know. There's no shame in the ignorance. Where there is shame is being ignorant and pretending that you know,
Yeah.
and forcing that knowledge that isn't really an actual knowledge on other people, and then getting angry when that's being challenged or when new information is being set forth in front of you. And even like what you were saying with the Trump thing, it's like, yes, there is a sect of people who absolutely worship him like the second coming of Christ. And that is ridiculous and frightening. And I don't agree with that either. But at the same time, just because someone agrees with certain policies or can recognize it, he was still by far a better president and leader than what we have in office right now. That it's just people can't see the difference between being able to just look at things objectively and acknowledge what was going to be best for this country versus, of course, you have the people who are just blind, also just completely blind, and the man can do no wrong, and treat him like he's some type of deity, which is also the extreme end of anything is problematic. But
well, this is the thing. The circle of extremism always ends up in one place, and that's fucking bedlam. People dying, whether it's the extreme left that turns into authoritarian communism, or the extreme right that turns into totalitarianism, fascism, whatever you want to call it. It always ends up in the same place. It's like, surely the history has been filled with enough warnings for you to go, I need to take a nuanced view of things and not just go, I'm either balls deep on this side or balls deep on that side. But such is the way of the world. And the trouble is also the world is also distracted by a lot of the real serious stuff, the things that have a long lasting impact on their personal prosperity, on their personal well-being, their quality of life and stuff like that. We spoke about Joe Rogan. Freedom of speech, I think, is a very important thing. But at the same time, we've got Russia on the Ukrainian border. The implications of what happens if they were to invade the Ukraine is pretty significant. I mean, you could extrapolate a series of events and say that emboldens China to take Taiwan. Taiwan has 92%. I suspect, I speak under correction, but 92% of the world's semiconductor manufacturing. If that happens, we're screwed. Because what do they think goes into your phone, your car, all of your connected devices in your house, all of that sort of stuff. If China controls the world's semiconductor supply, we really are in trouble, and we will feel it very, very quickly. There's closer to home. There's this fucking misguided utopian energy policy that the European Union, and actually to a degree the United States, is enacting, where they want to try and force everybody to move over to electric cars, even though the supply isn't enough to be able to charge up those cars or actually maintain that level of infrastructure. So what starts happening is you've got, like in California, you've got brownouts all the time. Over here, you've got a situation where electricity is increased in price. I think the 10-year increase is something insane, like 700%. A 700% increase in electricity. Like right now, our electricity price is about to jump by 50%. And what people don't seem to figure out is that has a knock-on effect on the price of food. It has a knock-on effect on the price of fucking everything. So like your whole quality of life is about to do this. And it's all because of these fucking imbeciles in office that because you're distracted by nonsense, whether someone masked up or whether someone, that you like on some bullshit reality TV show is going to progress to the next stage or not. You don't hold these fucking palookas accountable, and they just keep fucking up. And every single time they make a mess, they come up to you with their hands out saying, well, you pay for it. So it's, I mean, that'll always be my biggest frustration for as long as I live, is that people don't understand and have never and aren't screaming from the rooftops that government is by the people, for the people. Like, you work for us, we don't work for you, motherfucker. And we've been subdued by these by this elitist class, and it just gets worse and worse and worse, and people don't care. They just go along with it.
That's what's so frightening. And I mean, I agree that there's obviously been a lot of very drastic comparisons to like the Holocaust and Nazis, but at the same time, there's a lot of valid points where you can now see it unfolds in real time, because you look back and it's like, how can anyone have been like, Yeah, let's discriminate against these people. Yeah, I'm going to snitch on them because they should be thrown into jail. And you're like, well, people would do that right now if you didn't get vaccinated. People will do that right now if you're not wearing a mask. People will do, and when you say that, people are so angry. How could you compare this? Because no, it is not quite there yet. But it is very well on its way if things don't take a turn. And the fact that people will sit there and be like, you're being dramatic, it's your conspiracy theory. Is it really though? I mean, the level of medical discrimination happening right now is frightening. It's serious. I mean, imagine a world where you had to disclose everywhere, your employer, if you wanted to go to a concert, if you wanted to go eat dinner, if you wanted to register in school, if you had an STD. So think of how many people would be like, that's not okay. But now you have to disclose if you were vaccinated or not. And this is private medical information. If you weren't, you're going to be treated differently. You're not going to have the same opportunities as other people. And there's obviously countries doing it on a way more extreme end. Like look at Australia, who has actual camps that they are rounding people up and putting them in. And they're trying to come out and be like, look how fun they're having, they're tanning on their porch. And it's like, yeah, well, they played baseball in the Japanese internment camps that we had in America. Does that mean that they were okay then?
Yeah, it's funny as well, how certain people have kind of fallen for this nonsense. Like Claire Lehman, used to kind of fancy herself as a member of the IDW, which I also thought was the dumbest collective I've ever heard of in my entire life. I mean, I like Jordan Peterson, I like Ben Shapiro, I like Joe Rogan, but to call it the intellectual dark web is just the fucking stupidest thing ever. I don't like I have a real rebellion against anyone who sees themselves as an intellectual. There's I don't know if I've ever sent it to you, but there's a video clip of Thomas Sowell talking about intellectuals and his opinion on them, which is fucking brilliant. It's like just 10 minutes of him saying you don't know what the fuck you're talking about kind of thing. But
there's actually a quote that you would really appreciate, and maybe you've heard or seen it before, and it's to a simple man, a mountain is just a mountain. To an educated man, a mountain is not a mountain. To a wise man, a mountain is just a mountain. And I love that, because it's like, just because you are educated, doesn't necessarily mean that you are smarter. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're intellectual just because you're book read. It's not
like every fucking metal leftist favorite intellectual, Noam Chomsky. I mean, the biggest charlatan moron ever, a professor of linguistics who now suddenly knows everything there is to know about medical science, climate science, like geopolitics, the economy. It's like, Jesus Christ. I mean, this dude said Venezuela was a great idea while everything was falling apart. It's just, like I said, mind-boggling to me. Absolutely mind-boggling. But I want to bring it full circle. So we're talking about legends that say they don't care about the scene anymore. There's one guy that gets a pass, and that's Gol. So he can legitimately say because when I asked him, he's like, I don't listen to modern music. And the reason I bring him up,
literally lives in like a secluded cabin in the woods without a phone or a computer. So it's not even like he has access to his music. Like, he is so shut off from, and I admire him for that, by the way. There's a couple of guys like this. Raven would be another one from 1349, where I honestly admire their dedication to that and wish I could live in a cabin in the woods with no communication and can just be in my bubble and not have to deal with any of this. So he gets a pass because he's just on a whole different wavelength. It's not about gatekeeping. It is just about him wanting to gatekeep himself away from everyone and everything.
Well, I bring it up because I've wanted to thank you in person for getting that set up, because the fortunes of this podcast has taken such a fucking change since that interview happened. And like, when the interview was done, I was like thinking to myself, like, is this any good? And then, people started coming back and saying, I could tell you had to work hard at it, but it kind of, he sort of softened up and sort of talking eventually. But ever since I've had him on, the people, in terms of downloads, in terms of the attention the podcast gets, one thing that used to always piss me off, like particularly for the first 50, 60 episodes or so, I used to call it, like, jokingly to myself, business development. Like, on a Monday morning, I'd have to start sending the emails out, like, okay, blah, blah, blah. I run this podcast, it's Joe Rogan for metal people. Would you like to be on it? And invariably, you don't get a lot of response. And I mean, literally since Goal was on, I've never had to do a single one. I have so many people that want to be on. I can probably have episodes booked until the middle of the year at least, and I'll never have to lift a finger. But it is 100% down to you, and I'm so grateful and so humbled by the fact that you would have done that for me. I've always wanted to say thanks in person, but yeah, it really meant a lot to me. And I've gotten emotional on one podcast. I had to edit it out, so I'll refrain from doing it this time around. But yeah, like I said, it's much appreciated.
Wow, Jackie, of course. I mean, honestly, you are, I know you're a great interviewer. I mean, I know I could sound biased because you and I have developed a very close friendship, but at the same time, I feel that also has a lot to do with because I've admired what you've done from the start. And I think I told you from the start, he's a tough nut to crack and not really someone I can set up willy-nilly with a lot of people. So I'm really glad, and you're someone I knew that would be able to talk to him. And he is like that in the beginning. He always will come in with his walls up, and he'll let them down though once you prove to him that he can. And that's exactly what you did. And I remember I checked in with management. It was like, how'd it go? And they were like, well, he was very jolly after, so we know it went well. And that was like,
I was kicking myself for fucking stopping the recording because we spoke for about 15 minutes after that, and he was like so much more chilled out and relaxed. But it's because I'd started talking to him about wine. So we got into that. And actually, funnily enough, when I went on holiday now, I probably kind of stepped up my interest in wine much more than I did before. So it's like, man, I tell you what would be if I was independently wealthy, like, and I could start doing location interviews and stuff, I'd take him to a vineyard in South Africa and like, all right, let's try some of the high end stuff here, because I got into that much to my wallet's dismay.
Love that.
But anyway, as I said, it was just it's fucking awesome, and what it has done for the podcast is nuts.
I'm so happy to hear that, because I mean, you really deserve it. It's amazing how many of the artists I work with actually listen to you regularly. I mean, I was just chatting with the Cloak guys, and they were carrying on about how much they love you and Alan, and one of my own bands, Sayor, Andy Marshall. I mean, he started his own podcast. You and Alan also both very much inspired him, but and he even hit me up like, I mean, months after our podcast, and was like, I like that podcast you did with the bloke with the dark throne shirt. And I was like, oh yeah. And Mike from Tombs, anytime I'm like, this band, he's like, does Jackie like them? Like he won't even give it a second thought unless he knows how Jackie feels. Yeah. I mean, really become of cult status. And I mean, that says a lot about you, because I really can't say that about many others, especially podcasters who are fairly new. I mean, this only started in the past 2 years, like during the pandemic, really, right?
Yeah.
And that's hard to come by. Most people have been doing this for a long time, and took very many years to get that kind of.
Well, I started about a year before the pandemic.
Oh, that's right.
So I was the innovator with Zoom, because that was always one of the biggest problems. Is like, yes, I'll come on the podcast. What do you use? Zoom? No, I don't want to do that. I've never used Zoom before. I don't want to come on. But yeah, I mean, the pandemic definitely helped, because there was a lot of people stuck at home. So I could interview people quite easily. But I mean, one of the best things about it has been the friendships I've made. You being one, Mike being another one, the Amenta guys, the guys from Werewolves, Evan. I've made a lot of friends. Marco from Stellar Master Elite. I've made a lot of friends. Actually, Cheyenne as well. I have to shout him out.
Oh, Cheyenne's awesome too. Yeah, and he's another one that I made a friend with through you also, because he also found me through the podcast we did together, and we connected. And he's someone that, again, like just like you, even though I haven't met either of you in person, I have a really awesome connection with.
Well, so one thing I'm itching to do potentially is there's going to be something happening over Halloween in New York with Tombs potentially. And I've said to Mike, if it happens, I'm definitely going to go.
Wait, has he said that to you before on your podcast, or is this something you're going to have to edit out?
He's spoken to me about it. He has hinted at it. I'm not going to give any details, but
okay, all right, okay.
I'm just going to keep it at that. But I said to him, if that happens,
I'm not liable for this. This isn't my fault.
No. Of
all the things I would have to have you edit out, this would be it.
No, I said to him, if it happens, I'll go. And I spoke to Brock, and Brock is down for going as well. I'm pretty sure I can get Cheyenne to go, so that would be fucking brilliant. Like if everyone could get together in New York, it'd be awesome.
I will absolutely roll out to that. I mean, I'm only 2 hours from New York. Well, actually, more like 4 because of traffic, but worth it to come out for you guys, especially on Halloween. Yeah. So
yeah. No, yeah. Like I said, he has hinted at it. We've spoken about some of the stuff, but I'll keep everything else G14 classified. But,
all right. Cool.
Now, speaking of which, you're about to drop a podcast yourself. So when does it, like give me the details? What's the format? When does it go? When will it spring into existence? Where did you get the idea from?
Well, yeah, I would definitely say, first of all, it came to the idea. It was something for a long time I've wanted to do a podcast, but I don't want to do a regular cut and dry metal interview type podcast because there's so many of them out there. And I have to do that so often for all of my other jobs, whether it be doing interviews for like Outburn or whether it be doing just work with my own artists and pre-interviews with them and stuff like that. So it's not something that really interests me, but there is this part of me that feels like I have a voice and there's a lot that I want to say and a lot that I want to share. And I become more passionate about that in recent years. And in particular, I think it was right over the Christmas break, I listened to your episode on Agitators Anonymous with Alan. And you guys spoke about how Mortis came out and spoke about how wokeism is the new Christianity or the new religion, and people tried to get rid of, I'm paraphrasing here, but along the lines of people wanted to get rid of Christianity and God, and then they just created a new one anyway with this wokeism and all of that. And that was something that really spoke to me because something that I've been very passionate about has obviously been anti-organized religion. It's something dating back to, high school, that when I first started breaking away from my Catholic upbringing, it's something I thought about a lot. So this is the themes I'm going to explore. It's called Beyond Good and Evil. Much like what we've spoke about before, it's something that will kind of show two sides of each spectrum or different sides of everything. And it's kind of it's interesting because I've had a couple of guests I've recorded, and it's also developing into a real lesson in spirituality, which is something I'm kind of just learning about. And it's been pretty interesting hearing how people and different interpretations of spirituality and what that means separate from the concept of a cult-like organized religion. So, and of course we talk also, depending on the guest, certain people we've spoken very deep about the political landscape now and wokeism and things of that nature. And we also talk a lot about music and art and so I'm just waiting on a few assets to come together that I have some outside people working on for me. And as soon as I get those, it will be launching. I was aiming to get it out this month, but like I said, I'm still waiting on some artwork and things like that. But I'm sure it'll be out not long after this episode airs.
Yeah. No, well, that's fucking awesome. I think it's a great angle to come at it from. And it's funny you mentioned that because I grew up I've spoken to a couple of people about this, but we grew up in a very Christian home. I wrestled an awful lot, for a big chunk of my adolescent life about, I think when you grow up in something that is impressed upon you with such intensity, it's very, very, very hard to break out of that way of thinking, And I remember very clearly hearing Painkiller for the first time as an example and going like, does God want me to hear this music? And then like, well, yes, he wouldn't have made these guys be like, you start arguing with yourself, like these guys wouldn't be able to play guitar that well if he didn't give them the gift. So, and then you kind of get around it that way. But I mean, it was, I joke about it now, but it was frankly, when you're really young and you're really impressionable, that shit is fucking traumatic. And it's incredibly confusing. And then at the same time, as I've grown older, so I went through this phase where I fucking hated every single thing about religion, Christianity, everything like that. I still hate lots of it, but I do now start to take out some of the positives and go, some of the principles that I learned, some of the things I learned around at least self-reliance, that sort of stuff growing up, which was rooted in a Judeo-Christian mindset and belief set. I don't think those things are wrong. So my daughter right now, by default, purely because the closest school to her is a Christian school, or like it's called St. Mary's. They're not particularly heavy-handed on Christianity, but equally, I can rest easy in that they're not teaching her there's 73 genders. So right. It's like I'm kind of not I'm not unhappy that she's going there, because like I feel like she'll find her way in terms of the religion itself. But at the very least, I have a greater degree of comfort in what she's being taught. You know what I mean? She's not going to like I made the joke about 73 genders, but she's not going to be taught a bunch of fucking whack nonsense like that. So when I read that comment that Mortis had made, I was blown away by it, because I was like, you're the most badass guy ever, and you're basically sitting here saying, I don't personally think it was such a great thing that Christianity went away. It's like,
well, but I kind of got it, because it's like he's saying it because look at what it got replaced with. It just got replaced with now what blends all the worst parts of like Christianity and Islam. Like, I mean, this is something that I do talk about on my podcast, which I don't want to give too much away, but something we talk about a lot is how wokeism now and all of these social justice warriors and critical race theory, all of the ways that it relates to these same fundamental organized religion values. And you have on the lower end of it, I mean, at this point now, modern Christianity, the worst thing that's going to happen is like the Westboro Baptist Church is going to show up to your concert with pickets. And we see that happening like at Take shows in New York and them getting it shut down. And that's a very Christian thing. But then you also see like Antifa beating women and children in the street because they're wearing a MAGA hat. And that's very Muslim of them. So, and that's something, I mean, that Cheyenne is a guest, and we get really deep into that because he's someone who left an Islamic State and was pursuing music that actually could have jeopardized his life.
That dude has got many fucking wild stories.
Yes, he does. Yeah,
he's an interesting cat anyway. But yeah, he's got. I've had him on the show a couple of times. He's got some fucking crazy stories. Like there were a couple of times I was like, Jesus Christ, do I want to? I want to get fired. It's like, but the thing is, I mean, he's a very valid story because he lived that experience. So this is the other thing that I fucking hate about this modern mindset. Like if you don't fall in line with what we think, we don't care about your lived experience. But if you fall in line with what we think, then how dare you question that person's lived experience? It's like Larry Elder, Brock and I were joking about this, the black face of white supremacy, as the LA Times called him. The guy grew up in Compton. I mean, he is as self-made a man as you can possibly find. He's grown up poor. He knows exactly what it's like to be in an inner city school where there's loads of gangs, where he knows all of that. He knows the racism that those people face, and yet he's chosen the path that he's chosen in life. You don't agree with it, so it's irrelevant what he's gone through. You, from your fucking middle class condo in Los Angeles, are more than happy to say he's the black face of white supremacy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like Kim Classic. I mean, she is I forget what she was running for, Congress or Senate. That I got to be honest.
She's running for mayor of, I think she was running for mayor of Baltimore.
Yeah. It is Baltimore. I know. And I know that much that it's Baltimore. And I mean, she's running Republican because she lived firsthand the way democracy destroyed her city. And she gets on the ground and talks to real people, not just like some random like other politician or whatever, and talks to people on the streets of Baltimore about like, hey, do you want to defund the police? And they're like, hell no, my son was murdered. Or whatever it is, and really highlights the way that these lax laws. I mean, I don't know if you just saw, this has been driving me crazy and I'm so upset about it. Christina Yuma Lee, the Asian woman, she's about my age, and she was living in New York City, very successful. She was a producer for, I think it was like called Splice or something. I believe it's like some type of music app. And she was walking home, goes into her apartment, gets followed in by a crazy man on the street who stabs her 40 times and kills her. And it turns out this man was an out on bail criminal with a rap sheet that was like 5 pages long, all of these violent crimes. And her murder was a direct result of New York City's lax laws against criminals, violent criminals, nevertheless.
And then you have AOC saying that prisons should be the prison system should be dismantled.
Oh yeah, but she was the one that came out and chimed in and said it's actually the reason why crime is up is because something having to do with taxes. Because like tax prices, people can't like pay for their kids. I can't remember exactly what she said. It was so stupid. Look it up, fact check me, please, because it is the dumbest thing, one of the dumbest things she's ever said. That and crime is up because people are just stealing bread to feed their families.
Oh yeah. Well, when unemployment was really low when Trump was in office, she says because people are working two jobs.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what are you talking about? What world are you on? Please go back to bartending.
Yeah, but so you mentioned Baltimore. I've recently rewatched The Wire, and I was saying to Paige a couple of nights ago, like this is such a great show, and it's so sharp, and it's so like targeted on all of the things that go wrong. What I don't understand is how is David Simon, who wrote the show, who is so critical of the politicians, the Democrat politicians that have fucked that city up. How is he such an outspoken Democrat? I don't get it. Like, I mean, I'm not saying, don a MAGA hat, but Jesus Christ, like you at some point need to figure out these people have run that city for 40 years and they have every single year it's progressively worse. Like I remember one of the plots in I think season 4 is how the murder rate is about to eclipse 315 and it's this terrible thing, or 380. I think the murder rate in Baltimore last year, I want to double check myself on this.
While you're there, why don't you look up the murder rate in Philly, because we're already up significantly. It's literally what, like a month and a half as of now. It is February 18th. Okay, we are barely into 2022 and our crime has already surpassed this time last year. And last year was one of the highest crime rates in Philadelphia. New York City.
Here's the article. Philadelphia's city's 2022 murder rate already outpacing record deadly 2021. 3 weeks into the new year, Philadelphia has seen 38 killings, 2 more than this year ago, or this time a year ago. So 559 homicides. Last year, Baltimore was 338.
Yeah.
Those, by the way, are Bush League numbers in comparison
and that is
to my homeland of South Africa.
That's true, by the way, and that is just homicides. That is not accounting for attempted homicides or other violent crimes.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's the same everywhere. Chicago, Seattle, San Francisco. People are leaving their car doors unlocked and unopened just because they don't want people breaking the window to break in because they know it's inevitable. This is what's happening in San Francisco right now.
Yeah. And then London Breed, who was one of the big, cheerleaders of the defund the police movement, she's like, I'm tired of this bullshit. It's like, oh wow,
but
now you're backtracking. What you
asked for.
Exactly. No, it's again, like I said, it's completely fucking moronic. I mean, the trouble is as well. What they don't realize is if you let things get to a certain point of disorder and anarchy and chaos, you let that kind of social rot set in. It is so difficult to put it back.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, I will say, I think I see some people slowly waking up, and maybe not as many or as quickly as one would hope. But, there's little dribs and drabs of friends of mine who've voted for Joe Biden that are now like, what the hell did I do? And things like that people are starting to now kind of slowly see the light. I think too, there's a lot of people that I know. I mean, there's a stunning amount of people who got vaccinated, still got COVID, even though they were vaccinated and had complications from the vaccine, are still like, oh, but the vaccines are safe and effective. But I also have friends that are logical people and had bad reactions to the vaccine and still got COVID and are like, wow, that vaccine was a waste of time because I still got sick. And now I have extra complications from the vaccine. So I think there are some people on some level that are starting to slowly see it, maybe not overall. And look how many people have done a complete 180. Look at like Bill Maher, Barry Weiss, how many of these, Tim Pool, how many of these traditionally hardcore leftist progressives that have, Dave Rubin, that have done a complete 180.
Well,
I used to work with Dave Rubin, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, I used to fill in on the Saturday morning Out Q shows at Sirius XM, and one of them was the 6-pack with Dave Rubin and a different Ben Shapiro, not this Ben Shapiro, a gay Ben Shapiro. And there was a totally different Ben Shapiro, but there was a Ben Shapiro, weirdly enough. And so I filled in, and I knew him from working on Out Q, and weirdly enough at Sirius, I also worked on Patriot Radio. So
I think what Daily Wire are doing, by the way, is fucking smart. I mean, those dudes are savvy business people. This thing that they've just had this movie Shut In that they premiered on the day on they did it on YouTube, and then they're hosting it on the Daily Wire website. If you remember, they've got like 2 other movies coming out, but they've spotted this gap in the market where like people are sick and tired of seeing politicized movies and TV shows and stuff like that. Because like I've gotten to a point where I virtually just watch old stuff.
Same. Oh my God, same.
Yeah, I can't watch anything new because most of it is crap.
I just watched Yellow Jackets, and not that this is a spoiler, not a significant one anyway, but there's like a reunion of the high school girls. Like the whole premise is like these girls, they were in like a horrific plane crash, and it like follows the survivors in present time while looking back on the past of what happened in the wilderness, whatever. There's ritualistic cannibalism, all this stuff. So there's a scene at the high school reunion, and they're playing like Enya, because the whole thing is they were in like the 90s. And then they show this wall of all these inspirational women, and there's like Hillary Clinton. I'm like, no, this show is so good. Why are you ruining this?
But that's the thing. There's always something like that fucks it up. But again, I think that I'm a little bit more optimistic than I think Alan is, or a lot of people that I know. I do feel like I think the tide is turning. Like even in media, right? I don't know. I've not seen the movie yet because it only came out today. But the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre on the trailer, there's a bit where Leatherface steps onto this bus, and there's a bunch of people filming him on their mobile. And I think he whips out his chainsaw, and the one guy goes, "Dude, you better not do anything. You're going to be canceled." And then chainsaw starts up. And like every review I've seen so far of the movie, people are like, the best scene in the movie. It's like when he gets on the bus. So it's also like you kind of there was that backlash in the 90s to the PC PC police of the 1980s as well. You know, the movies became way more violent. They became way more fucking outlandish in the 90s. You kind of you went from Pretty Woman to Reservoir Dogs in 1990, being like the popular movie, the movie that people loved. So I think it's going to change. I really do hope Trump doesn't run. I know the Republicans potentially want to run him again. I think it would be a massive mistake. There's too many people that are, I mean, he's a fucking wacko anyway, but there's too many people that have TDS, and it's not productive. I think DeSantis is a good guy to run.
I agree. I really hope it's DeSantis, because he's level-headed. He's shown that he is capable of leading and circumventing a lot of these things. And again, people are going to hear that and think, "Oh my God, she wants a racist." It's like, no, because again, he opposes critical race.
Don't say gay. That's the big thing they're trying to push now. Which I mean, firstly, it's not don't say gay. It's just don't teach my kids a bunch of fucking sexual weirdness when they're 8. I don't want my daughter to. I don't want my daughter to be taught the birds and the bees by a teacher. Period. No. I don't give a shit who's involved. I don't want her to know those things right now. When she's older, I will have that conversation with her. But there's nothing in school that suggests that she should have that conversation. There's nothing about being in grade 3 or grade 4 that suggests you should have that conversation with a kid as a teacher.
No, and they're doing even younger than that. I mean, there's all of these accounts that are now exposing these teachers, libs of TikTok, Corey Yasha, and the recurring theme with these people is there's a lot of preschool teachers, kindergarten teachers, first grade teachers, and they're like, I have a gender closet where my kid wears approved clothes from their parents. They could change into something else because they feel like that gender. It's like, can you just teach them like shapes, colors, numbers, animals, sounds, whatever it is that you're supposed to do, and like let parents worry about that? And I mean, it's also creating confusion. There's children who are genuinely autistic or have some type of mental illness. And instead of getting to the root of that and treating what they actually have, they're just being said, okay, gender dysphoria. You're a girl.
I was about to say, they go, let's get the puberty blockers out. Yeah. My daughter, when she was 5 years old, I was playing with her. I was holding my boxing bits up, and she had the boxing gloves on, and she'd punch it a few times, and then she'd stop. Then she'd go, I'm a gorilla. Now, here's the question. Should I have stopped and said, okay, put down the gloves, go get a banana out of the kitchen. Yeah. Don't worry about sleeping in your bed tonight. Just swing off the trees, and whenever you feel ready,
I built her a habitat in the yard. I mean, that's
exactly.
When I was a kid, I thought I was a mermaid, and like, should my parents have been like, you're right, go live in the ocean now. Goodbye, child. I mean, come on.
Touch you over the side of the boat.
Yeah,
we'll see you when we see you.
Staten Island ferry. Here you go. Go find Atlantis.
But no,
Like,
I do hope someone like him runs. I mean, you wish there could be like a politician that had Reagan's oration skills at least, because if you look at like the way that he governed the country when he ran against Walter Mondale, I mean, that's the biggest landslide the Republicans ever won by. So if someone like that who can cut through. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard, if she ran on a Republican ticket, firstly, I think she'd absolutely wipe the floor with anybody else who runs against her, because the Republicans would definitely vote for her, and what's saying there would be a lot of people on who are kind of strained Democrat voters who would vote for her as well. But I don't know if that'll happen. I think I would not be surprised if she reemerges as a Republican at some point. But someone like that running with DeSantis, I mean, like a DeSantis Gabbard ticket, fuck no,
that would be
unstoppable.
amazing. I mean,
you can even run it to say, look, we disagree on a lot of things, but we've come to the realization that we have to find things we agree on in order for this country to unite and be run effectively. That's literally, that would be my pitch.
I agree with that too. And again, it's like people look at it and they think, oh, he's anti-vaccine. It's like, no, he's actually not only just pro-vaccine, but he's also pro other treatments as well. He was using the micro antibody treatments from, or whatever you call microlonal, whatever. I can't pronounce these words.
Monoclonal antibodies.
Yeah, I'm not an expert. Surprise. I know it shocks everyone. No, yeah, I have no idea, but he was using those and then they like took the funding away, saying they weren't effective, even though there was credible data that they were effective. And I mean, just things like that, or the new thing with, okay, he opposed CRT, so he's a white supremacist because he doesn't want white people to be uncomfortable in schools. It's like he's literally anti-racism. He wants all racism erased from schools, racism against Black people, white people. He wants people to just be people. There's nothing wrong with that. There's something wrong with you telling the white kids that they're all guilty and born with the original sin. I mean,
well, there was I can't remember what study this related to, but there was a study done years back where they did CRT related diversity training with a group with like a platoon in the military. And what they found was the people in the military, whether they were white or Black, started holding over a period of time these incredibly racist views, and they could no longer work together, function together properly. And the reason why is because you're constantly being reminded of the fact that you're different, and you're constantly being reminded of the fact that, or actually not even reminded of the fact, you're constantly being told you're different. You're constantly having this kind of divisive rhetoric crammed down your throat. And instead of going, we all bleed the same blood, we're all the same type of people, and we all need to get together in order to make this work, there's all these other things that enter into the agenda or into the equation that just create complete and utter dysfunction. And let's be honest, that's what CRT is designed to do. Did you watch that? Did you listen to the James Lindsay episode on Rogan?
No, I did not actually.
You should check that out.
I love James Lindsay. He's one of my favorites because he also, no one is sacred. He will, yeah.
No, I mean, well, he's also hated by. I mean, he's even though he himself is pretty progressive. I mean, like in terms of his political views, he's pretty progressive.
I mean, same with
he's fucking despised by the progressives just because he calls them out on their Marxist bullshit.
Yep.
But
he calls everyone out. He's not sitting there and like if he's someone who is, on the right, he's also, and they're misstepping, he's going to say that and he's going to bring it up. It's not like he's only attacking. It's like equal opportunity. And that's what CRT is, not equal opportunity, by the way. It is the oppressor victim dynamic. And we actually have to be equal and work together. That's not what it is. And they make you believe that's what it is, but it's not.
And the thing is, like I've said to you, I believe in, again, polling suggests this will be the case as well. If you look at, the number of African Americans that voted Republican in the last general election, they'll be the ones that lead the charge and get this stopped. Like, it's awesome when you see these parents stepping up in schools and going like, don't think you're doing me a favor, middle class white man or white woman, you're being a fucking asshole. Stop saying this to my child. That to me is that's the clearest sign that things are gonna get better. There's hope around the corner, I think.
I agree. I agree.
I wanted to ask you one other thing before you wrap up. You posted a picture about 5 weeks ago on your Instagram your 10-year challenge pick, and I was very touched by the story that you wrote down there with your, even though you had your rapper your rapper moment on there, like when the popo took you down. But I mean, firstly, I've never seen you kind of share anything that like openly before. What made you, like, what got you to the point where you were sort of felt comfortable telling that story?
It's kind of a weird thing because when that basically, for anyone watching who doesn't know, I shared a photo of me getting arrested for fighting. And I was 22 years old. It was 10 years ago, July of 2012. And when that had happened, I mean, it was not by any means my first fight. It was just the first time I had consequences. I'd never even been suspended from school for fighting. I had never gotten in any real trouble for fighting before that moment. And after that happened, that was a wake-up call because it was very scary to now have to face these consequences and possibly have to go to prison. And I did great in jail, though. I have to say, it turns out I was the most violent offender there, so I had the most respect. And I also had great tattoos, so I had a lot going for me. Jail was fine, but prison itself, I don't know how great that would have been had I gone there. It was a really dark time in my life and a big wake-up call. And I remember after that happened, a friend of mine said to me, and I was like, I'm never fighting again. I'm never going to put myself in this position again. I need to change, and I need to change my ways. And a friend of mine turned around and was like, yeah, okay, you're going to lose your temper again, and we're going to be having the same conversation. And I said, no, I'm not. And he's like, you won't even go a year. And I said, I'm going to go a long time. And I remember saying, like, I'm going to go 10 years and look back on this and be like, see, I told you so. And it's something that I've thought of a lot because there's been situations where I've wanted to get violent or had a lot of anger and was able to take a step back from it and be like, you know what, literally not worth it, because this is just going to be a negative reaction that's going to cause more negative reactions and more negativity. The best thing to do is to go and make some angry tweets about it, or like just like go home and just smoke some weed and talk to someone who makes me happy. Like, and looking back and just always having that in the back of my mind of the person I used to be and how much I've changed. I mean, that wasn't the only problem in my life. I was an unpleasant person and, wasn't the most, didn't have my shit together, I guess, so to speak, when I was younger. And it took a lot of work to get to where I am. And it was just kind of feeling reflective. Right around that time as well was also my, I didn't post about this, but it was also my 3-year anniversary at Season of Mist. And that's something that always makes me feel a little reflective, like, wow, I really like finally found where I'm supposed to be and where my journey was taking me. And I don't know, I guess it just really felt like a real proud of myself moment. Like, I now am at that 10-year mark that I said that, watch, I'm going to be here in 10 years and I'm going to prove to you that I could do it. And I did it. And I didn't just do it to prove it to other people by any means. I did it for myself, but it feels good to know that people who knew me at that time didn't believe that I would be able to change and be a better person. And I think too, there's a lot of people, especially now, who have gone through a lot through the past 2 years, and it's created them to be in a very negative place. And I think it's just a good way to remind people, like, you don't have to be in a negative place, and you can change things, and you can kind of turn stuff around. I don't like this victim mentality. I like this victorious mentality, and being able to say, I used to be this, I hit rock bottom, but I turned it all around and look where I am. And if I could do it, you definitely can do it, kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't want to be a product of my environment. I want my environment to be a product of me.
Right.
I mean, I can relate because I had, growing up, the most fucking horrific temper on the face of the earth. Like, I often think to myself, if people had, if I had grown up in the, in 2022 or, even 2010, they would have seen me as a troubled child, because I used to get into tons of fights at school. I never started a fight, but I had this insane idea that if someone picked a fight with me, then I needed to get absolutely destroyed by whatever means necessary. And that
was my mentality as well.
Yeah, that temper kind of stayed with me for a very long time. I mean, I remember one morning, I was about must have been about 23, 24 years old. I couldn't find my wallet, and I kicked a dresser drawer literally to pieces, like because I was so angry not being able to find it first thing in the morning. And the only thing that took that away was Thai boxing. When I started doing Muay Thai, and I kind of fell in with a group of people that were there. 2-3 years into doing that, it just went away. I mean, literally the and it's never really come back. Like I'm still, well, probably people can figure it out. I'm still a fairly fiery character, but I think this is why I've always said to people, like, if your kids have temper issues, or they've got, an issue with too much energy, like, the best thing you can do for them, like the absolute best, is send them to Muay Thai, send them to something that is a constantly humbling force, because there is nothing more humbling than being fucking smacked in the face by somebody, or going into a ring, sparring with someone, thinking you're going to do well, and then just getting absolutely pummeled. You have your wins, you have your losses, but that, to me, like, you can see Mike does Muay Thai as well, so look how chilled out he is. But it really helps. For me, it was one of the greatest things I could ever have done for myself. I did it unwittingly, but it changed my entire life, my entire perspective on life, and really, like, I think that was something that was crippling for me, and was eventually going to land me in trouble, was my temper, and it really got that under control.
Yeah, no, it's a real thing. And I mean, for me, I can't say I did anything necessarily like that. In high school, I did actually join the lacrosse team as a way to expel anger, but I feel that had kind of an adverse effect, because everyone on that team was very all about the violence. And instead of being like, well, we suppress it here, it was kind of like, well, we're the worst team in the league, but we're going to get the most penalties, kind of thing. So I don't know, that really helped in that sense. But I would say when, things happened when I was 22, one of the biggest things, and I really learned this in my court-ordered anger management classes, was to, when you have a negative reaction to something, it causes a negative chain reaction. So if you're in a bad mood, and you now take that mood out on other people, whether it be hurting them physically, hurting them emotionally, hurting yourself by, maybe deciding I'm not going to show up to work, or something, that you now cause other problems for yourself. And then how you react to those problems can possibly cause more problems for yourself. And it's like a spiral effect. And that's something I really took to heart, because I started realizing I had a lot of, well, woe is me, everything bad happens to me. And I realized, well, I'm kind of creating that because of the way I'm reacting to these situations, and because I'm a negative person, and I'm having these, even something as simple as, going from being like that, like, it's so cringy when I see like Facebook memories, I'm like, oh, delete. And it's like a status, like, I'm so miserable. Oh, my boyfriend broke up with me. And I look back, I'm like, first of all, bitch, oh my God, you should have broke up with him. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, even then, like, I started having this realizing, wow, I get more attention by being funny, or and I feel better when I get attention for being funny, and then other people make me feel good about myself, and it helps my self-confidence, and like little things like that. And so for me, instead of having really an outlet, it was more this proactive versus reactive way of thinking I started to learn to develop, where it's like, this thing happened, it's an inconvenience, let it be an inconvenience. Don't let it control your day. Don't have this kind of reaction to it, because if you do, there's going to be more consequences, and it's just going to spiral out and get worse. And I've noticed such a change in my life. I mean, I would say 26 was the first year I really started to make bigger changes in this kind of retrospect. And, the past, I guess, 6 years or 5 or 6 years have really been amazing, because I've really changed that for myself. And by changing that, sure, there's things in my life I can't control, but that doesn't mean they have to control me.
Yeah. Well, ma'am, I will say, and I, mean this very sincerely, along with all the men that I mentioned earlier that I'm very happy to have gotten to know since I started this podcast, you're definitely way up there. So, I think you do a killer job at Season of Mist. I often talk, obviously, as you know, about Season of Mist on the podcast anyway, but, you think you do a killer job. I'm really looking forward to your podcast. And it's fucking great catching up with you. We again, in an hour and a half, we set the world to rights on just about everything under the sun: politics, music, culture, movies.
There's no one I'd rather get canceled with, Jackie.
I think.
Thank
I
you.
mean, I sometimes I worry about that, but I mean, I don't think there's anything that I say that people could. I mean, unless they're really looking, could really massively take out of context. I mean, the fact of the matter is, again, I think everybody's entitled to their own opinion and their own views. If you agree with me, you agree. If you don't, that's fine too. I'm more than willing to listen to what you have to say, because I think that's part of the richness of life. If you remove that, if you believe in, in living in your own echo chamber, you are removing part of, I think, an essential part of the human experience.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, I agree. And you're awesome, Jackie. I appreciate you giving me this platform. I really appreciate what you're doing. And I really, to your credit, believe there's been a lot of people who have felt the same way we have. And until you gave them that platform, they felt afraid to speak up. So you really gave a lot of people a voice in that sense. And that is something that, in general, the arts, not just metal, but entertainment needs. So thank you. And thanks for everything. And I'm really glad that we've become friends. And I really hope you're out here in New York, because that's going to be.
Fuck yes, yeah.
Yeah.
If that happens, like I said, I'll definitely be there. And speaking of people I've given a platform, Roman from Bizarre Cult. So just for the record,
awesome.
I had them on before anyone else did. But yeah, he is very cool, and that by Overlap record is fucking excellent. It's really, really good.
Everyone at the label keeps saying he's very Nikita minded. And, you've spoken with Nikita from Darewag, and
he's very similar.
Yeah, he's brilliant. He's an awesome person. And by all accounts, I haven't had much interaction yet with Roman since we only just signed him. I will say Mike Hills, though. I had a Mike Hill moment where I looked at Bizarre Cult. I was like, okay, well, Jackie's following. They must be good, because I hadn't listened to them yet. I just looked them up just to see what I was looking at. And that was the first thing that caught my eye was our mutuals.
Yeah. But he's on, so By Overleft was on my top 20 of 2021. I think it was like number 14 or something. It's a fucking excellent record. If you've not spent much time listening to it, it's brilliant.
I have actually, since we finally got all the materials, and I've been streaming it, and it's really, really good.
No, he's a very talented dude, very humble and very unassuming as well.
Yeah.
But cool. All right. Well, listen, stay on. We'll formally say goodbye. I just want to say one thing to you off air. And
all right.
Yeah. So adios, motherfuckers. And I'll talk to you in a second. Thank you so much to Katy for coming on the podcast. She will be back without a shadow of a doubt. It is always great catching up with her, and great to hear as well that she's launching her own show. I'm very much looking forward to that. And as I said, I had an absolute blast talking to her. Hope you guys enjoyed that too. And as I mentioned to her on the show, I really do owe her a debt of gratitude for the support that she's shown into the Necrosphere pretty much since she and I first started speaking. But getting Gol booked for episode 100, that was a real game changer. And ultimately it means that it feeds into the mission. It helps me to give bands like Quell, Master's Call, Trivax, etc. more exposure, because I'm able to get on bigger guests. Bigger guests mean obviously more audience, and around we go. But it's great talking to her. And the song that you listened to, in case you were wondering, is off the forthcoming ABBATH record, Dread Reaver. That'll be out on Season of Mist Records on the 25th of March, which is 3 days before my birthday. So start saving your money for the tributes that you will be paying me on that wonderful day. And that track was called Dream Coal. I've had that record now for probably a month or so, and it's pretty good. It's definitely, in my opinion, a step up from the last two, and probably the most hungry I've heard ABBATH sound in a while. So I'll talk about it in more detail nearer the release of the record. But if you like that track, I'll put it this way: you're most likely going to like the rest of the record. Now let's talk about the new George Corpsegrinder solo effort. He is performing under the name Corpsegrinder. The record is elegantly titled Corpsegrinder, and is the first release on the Perseverance Media Group label, which is Jamie Jasta's new record label. Jamie Jasta, of course, of Hatebreed fame, and he has kind of been talking on his podcast for a while now about this vision where he would sort of get singers of bands he really likes together and do these projects for them. Obviously, there's been the first two Dee Snider records that he did. The Dee Snider House Band, or I think they should be called the Jamie Jasta House Band, which includes Charlie and Nick Belmore. They make a return to this album and provide most of the instrumental backing for George Corpsegrinder's very trademark, very characteristic growls. And musically, I would say this is a enjoyable dose of empty calories. And that's not to hate on it. When you listen to the record, I think you can understand what I mean. Musically, you'll hear death metal, you'll hear thrash, you'll hear a bit of slam/hardcore influence. There's a couple of songs where I kind of kept finding myself imagining Jamie Jasta singing to the track if it was in a different key. Great example of that being a song called Crimson Proof, which is sort of around the halfway mark on the record. And I think the formula, it hits more often than it misses, but it does miss from time to time. The second track, for example, Bottom Dweller, the riff sounds like it was written by a 10-year-old. It sounds like one of those riffs that a guy would write when he's just started a band. All Souls Get Torn, which is track 4, I kind of feel the same way about. But then on the flip side, the album does seem to really kind of pick up momentum, particularly from that track that I just mentioned now, Crimson Proof. And from there on out, it is actually very, very good. It's also very short. It's only 31 minutes long. It does kind of whiz by, and when it's done, you kind of go, well, what did I gain from that? You gained a bit of entertainment. You gained the pleasure of hearing George Corpsegrinder sing on something other than a Cannibal Corpse album. But I would say, as a vehicle to showcase his capability outside of traditional death metal, I prefer Paths of Possession, and I also prefer the Serpentine Dominion record that he did with, I think it was one of the dudes from Killswitch Engage. But that said, this is still an enjoyable record. It's entertaining, and I know I'm probably sounding less positive about the record than I would normally sound when I do reviews. I've said before, I won't do negative reviews, but this was a pretty, high profile release. And also I've been fucking busy. This has been the main new release that I've had a chance to listen to. So hence why I was kind of sharing my thoughts on that with you. I mean, will I go back to listening to this over and over again in 6 months' time? Probably not. There's also some React channels on YouTube that throw the word phenomenal around like the Democrats throw around welfare checks. This is definitely not phenomenal. It's got good production. It's well written. It's, as I said, it's enjoyable for the time that it's there. When it's done, are you going to go back to it? Probably not. But you could do worse than to throw on some Corpsegrinder. And when he's good, he's fucking great, as evidenced by the track that I'm about to lay on ya. This is the 9th track on the record, and it is called Master of the Longest Night. Not quite Cannibal Corpse, but not half bad either. That was Master of the Longest Night. It's off George Corpsegrinder Fisher's first solo record, available right now on the Perseverance Music Group imprint. And I will leave the link, as always, in the description to the podcast. So if you want to head over to their Bandcamp, or to his Bandcamp, check out the song, check out the record. When you buy anything, let him know that you heard about it on Into the Necrosphere, and that even though Old Jackson wasn't overwhelmingly positive about it, he still did enough to convince you to buy. Right now, I'm going to whisk us all magically away to Metal Storm so that we can read some metal news headlines, talk some shit, and listen to some music. Before I get to Metal Storm, though, I just noticed that Au Dessus had posted a new track off of their forthcoming EP, Mend, which is going to be out on April the 29th. And if you've been following the podcast for a period of time, you'll know I'm a big fan of these guys. They're from Lithuania. They put out a record, I think back in 2018, called End of Chapter, which was fucking fantastic. So I've been looking forward to this one for a while, and figured, what the hell, I'm going to be recording this React news segment anyway, so I may as well save the song until then to listen to. So I'm going to hit play, and let's see what these guys have come up with in the, frankly, way too long time that they have kept us waiting for a new release. I mean, that so far sounds fucking excellent. I love this album cover as well. So again, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll see it. It kind of seems to carry a similar sort of vibe to the artistic direction of their previous stuff. But that sounds fucking brilliant. Really like it. It's got an old school feel, but with a modern flair to it. Reminds me a little bit of Cold Cell. Might be off on that one, but yeah, there's something about it that reminds me a bit of Cold Cell. Let's give it another 30 seconds or so. That's when that melodic break comes in there. They did the same thing on the first track of End of Chapter. So if you go back and you listen to that record, you'll see what I mean. There's I think it's about 2 minutes into the track, there's this fucking incredible melodic break that kicks in, and they kind of seem to have gone with a similar formula here. But man, does that sound cool. Let's get back to it. Very, very, very impressed, and very much looking forward to that album. I thought that I would, so I'm not surprised. But yeah, I fucking love that. I think that's really, really cool. So that was Au Dessus, and like I said, that EP is called Mend. The song was called Negation 2, and it's out on April the 29th. So definitely one to look forward to. Okay, so we move on to Metal Storm. Let's have a gander at what is or what the latest news headlines have to say. And I'm just going to go with what's attracting my attention. The first one on the list is Drudkh streaming video for the Nocturnal one. It says here, Ukrainian black metal stalwarts Drudkh are releasing an official music video for the new song, The Nocturnal One. The video was originally not slated for release until later this year, along with a new record from the band. However, due to the increasingly dangerous situation in their homeland, being situated in the epicenter of the invasion, the band has requested that the video be released immediately as a sign of Ukrainian resistance. Drudkh has always shown unwavering pride for their country through their music, which side note, naturally got them put onto all sorts of far left woke shit lists because how dare you say you love your country. This poignant statement is a testament to their fighting spirit and love for their homeland. The new record and its details will be revealed in time. Due to vinyl plant delays, the album release is delayed until late 2022. Drudkh stated the following: even though we weren't supposed to share any statement or music until later this year, we're grateful for this new track out here today. It represents hope. May it strengthen those who need it. Before I play that track, let me just say about this fucking fiasco in the Ukraine. So I don't want to join the chorus line of bozos who I've seen on social media, over the course of the last 5 days or so, suddenly go from, being amateur virologists to being newly ordained geopolitical experts. And all of their pearl clutching and all of their screaming online essentially amounts to the same thing. They're all doing it for power and greed, innit? It's a much more complex situation than that, and I think anybody who cares to investigate will probably find that the blame for the situation lies fairly squarely at the doorstep of the European Union, who allowed themselves to become dependent on Russian energy and who fed the Russian military machine through the money that they were paying for that Russian energy, and then the Biden administration for being as spectacularly incompetent at withdrawing from Afghanistan as they were. As well as themselves shutting off their energy production capacity, so that Europe is kind of stuck in this between a rock and a hard place where they don't necessarily have an alternative to Russia. Should the worst come to worst, and I think all of this, in my personal opinion, contributed to Vladimir Putin, who himself is a thug and a fucking sociopath, assessing the situation and going, now is the time for me to indulge my expansionist tendencies. And of course, right on cue, the crazy nonsense propaganda comes out on all sides. On one hand, you've got Vladimir Putin, accusing the Jewish president of the Ukraine of leading the Nazi resistance. And then on the other hand, you've got all this crap coming out like the Ghost of Kiev, an ace fighter pilot that shot down 5 Russian airplanes. And all of that stuff is quickly rubbished and shown off to be, complete and utter nonsense. I don't fall for any of that crap. I don't really choose to focus on any of it. And honestly, I think even the geopolitical analysts got this one wrong. Peter Zeihan, George Friedman, 2 guys who I very much enjoy and I very much follow. Neither of them, quite publicly thought that Putin would be this audacious. I think that whatever is going on behind the scenes, we'll eventually find out about in time. But, whenever there's this much propaganda and misinformation about something, my alarm bells immediately start ringing and I start thinking about who benefits from all of this, because certainly the Ukrainian people don't. But then I would imagine the Russian people feel the same way. They certainly don't benefit from this, especially with the sanctions that have now been raised against Russia, more or less taking their economy to complete implosion. Does Putin benefit from it? I mean, people are saying he's gone off his rocker, but then if you want to get conspiratorial, you might be able to go down a rabbit hole that gets you to a point where you say Vladimir Putin was part of the Young Leaders program in the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum, in my opinion, has just failed at their stated Great Reset. And who knows? Maybe this is the way that they try again. To kind of dump us into this fucking technocracy and this authoritarian hellscape that they have planned for us. I don't necessarily subscribe to that, but I'm just saying it's possible to get yourself down that rabbit hole. Me personally, I focus on what's immediate and what's in front of me, and that is that my heart goes out to everybody in the Ukraine, everyone affected by this, and I hope that this goes or gets brought to conclusion with as little loss of life and as little collateral damage as possible. And, obviously I've had Vitaly from 1914 on. I dropped him a note as well, and let him know that the foul-mouthed South African living in the UK, is rooting for him. But, for me, first and foremost, it's about the folks living in the Ukraine, and I, for what little it's worth, I hope that they know that I stand in solidarity with them. And I would urge all of you, if you see anything online where you can donate to people, could donate to victims of this fucking mess, if you have a couple of ducats to spare, then definitely do so. So, having said that, let's get back to some music. And I am a huge fan of Drudkh. They were on my top 50 favorite black metal list. If you haven't listened to that episode or those episodes yet, then go back, because I think they start all the way at like episode 23 or something. But excited any time there is new Drudkh music out. And actually, just before I hit play, I thought it was super cool of the guys from Season of Mist to turn around and say that, any of the Ukrainian artists that are on their label have a job at HQ, I think back in France or back in Europe, should they need it, place to stay, etc. I mean, that is, a label that cares about their artists. I thought that was absolutely fucking gangster. So, without any further ado, let's check out the new Drudkh single, The Nocturnal One. Don't know if it's just my headphones, but the production sounds a little off to me on this. Like the guitar is very, very fuzzy, much more so than their last couple of records. Like I said, it might just be something with my setup over here. These headphones are great, but they have this. They can be a little bit pedantic. If somebody has tried to phone me as an example and I reject the call, it cuts into my headset, but it'll fuck up the sound in my headset for anything else that I try to do until I switch it on and off. But anyway, that being said, I like the riff. I like the sound. I mean, musically it sounds like Drudkh. It doesn't sound like they've done anything, hugely outside of their comfort zone. But that's fine too, because their comfort zone has resulted in many, many great records. So I'll get back to this one for another half minute or so. Yeah, top-notch stuff, as you'd expect from them. I really like that. I think that whatever they have in store for us on the full-length record, I suspect everyone will like as well. Save the woke who, as I said, clutched their pearls and wept themselves to sleep over the fact that that the band has spoken in the past about love of country. Now all of a sudden it's okay to post a Ukrainian flag on your Facebook page, of course, but a couple of years ago you were part of the far right if you did that. Let's see if there's anything else on here that I think is interesting. Not a whole lot. Oh wait, Therion announced Leviathan 2 European touring plan. To promote their newly announced studio album Leviathan 2, due out on September the 23rd, the mighty Therion confirm a string of headlining shows in Europe. Booked in November and December 2022, it's comprised of 21 tour dates in total. Now, folks might hear the word or the name Therion leave my lips and go, is Jackie on crack? Is Jackie on some of those Biden crack pipes? The answer, of course, to that is no. But I will say this: Therion have had a couple of cool tunes on their day, and one of them is off Theli, and it's called "In the Night Side of Eden." So if you haven't listened to Therion for a while, go back and listen to that song. It's fucking brilliant. "In the Night Side of Eden," pure genius. Now, speaking of a band who is pure genius, and this is one that I certainly won't be shy of professing my fandom for. Crowbar put out a new single 1 week prior to the release of their Zero and Below album. Sludge metal juggernauts Crowbar premiere the last preview tune called Bleeding from Every Hole, which sounds to me like a very rough porno movie. Below you can check out the list of tour dates across the US where Crowbar will be supporting Sepultura. Let's listen to this. Again, one I have specifically saved for this segment of the podcast, but generally when Crowbar put out anything, there's a giddy little schoolboy in me screaming with fucking joy. So let's hear what they've done. I mean, basically, as soon as that riff kicked in and the sort of galloping drums were taking us forward, you kind of knew what was coming. It was going to be a relatively fast chorus, and then it would go into, slow, sludgy, maybe pre-chorus. I'll bet you anything it's about to pick up speed again. I don't give a fuck that it's that it's predictable. I love it. I absolutely love it. Kirk sounds so cool. The riff sounds badass. The production sounds great. I'm very fucking excited about this album. Learning to live again. Bleeding from every hole. Purity in my soul. And the pit goes fucking wild as soon as he says that. I mean, you can even see it was written specifically for that, which is also fucking badass. I believe in strength, never cast aside, and I will not let my emotions die. When you pay the price for the things you've done, you can thank it. Fucking genius. Absolute genius. I need to seriously see if I can get Kirk on the podcast. I've spoken to him once before. He was a very, very cool dude. So really, really keen to have him on the show again. Not again, have him on the show at some point. But yeah, I spoke to him for Metal Rules way back. The next headline: Archgoat unveil opening track from upcoming EP. Intimately tied to their roots, Archgoat's forthcoming EP channels the rawness and devastation of the debut EP Angel Cunt from 1993 in 4 gruesome new compositions. All Christianity Ends is a brutally focused reminder that while the infamous Finnish black metal band legends continue to evolve, develop, and even refine their hellish sound over recent full-lengths, the elemental building blocks of classic Archgoat remain sequenced in their DNA. As a first devilish evocation, we present the opener Ascension Towards the Promethean Fire. Listen to the track via Bandcamp or via the YouTube channel. Let us check this out. So the track is Ascension Towards the Promethean Fire, and it's available on Deborah Morty, who, alongside Season of Mist, as I said many times, are one of my favorite record labels. The intro sounds suitably grim and badass. I like it. usher it along for the sake of time. I like the vibe of the song. Those drums are fucking terrible. It sounds like a fucking teenager playing drums on a dustbin. And then somebody has taken something like Drummer from Hell or whatever drum modulation software, and they've just replaced the dustbin sound with a snare. I don't understand how bands think that is... I wouldn't say acceptable, because you should be able to do whatever you want, but that is the way to that is the way to the hearts and minds of the audience in 2022. It just sounds so stupid. Like, mix it up, throw in some different fills and rhythms. Any just monotonous drums like that, to me, is that kind of should have been put to rest in the early 90s. If you hear a guy like David Gray, who's a drummer I really, really like, he'll play those fast drums, and he'll play those kind of necro grim drums on, a lot of Antichrist Imperium songs, even on some Voices stuff. But he mixes it up, though. He breaks up the monotony. It doesn't sound like it's just, some dude who's, playing on half a drum kit. Oh, fuck it. I think that's, like I said, the vibe is alright, but I mean, there's a fucking million bands with a decent vibe. There's, that I can get into. That is just not my thing. Rotting Christ, Sakis Tolis shares another song from his solo project. Legendary Greek black metal musician Sakis Tolis has shared second single, My Salvation, from his debut solo album, Among the Fires of Hell. I've already heard this. It sounds a lot like Sleep of the Angels and A Dead Poem. So if you like those two records, you are going to fucking love his solo stuff. Lamb of God in the studio. Virginia-based metal legends Lamb of God have been holed up in a studio in California with longtime producer Josh Wilbur, recording what appears to be new material for the follow-up to their 2020 self-titled album, and it is tentatively due for release later this year, although it may be delayed if Randy Blythe decides to pen a blog where he gives us his expert analysis of the current geopolitical crisis ravaging the Ukraine. I love Lamb of God's music, as I said before, but that man is one of the most insipid fucking turds on the face of the earth. Nay Obliviscaris, drummer, decides to leave the band. Obviously, Nay Obliviscaris also features the stylings or the talents of Zen of Omega Infinity, and I know they're working on a new record, which I'm very, very excited about, and I'll have to have those guys back on the podcast again at some point soon. But anyway, it says here, after many years played together, extreme prog metalers Nay Obliviscaris and drummer Daniel Presland have now parted ways. Daniel has decided to leave the band to move on with other projects. He's also involved in the new band Black Lava. Statement from the band: Dan has been an absolute rock behind the kit for this band for so many years, so many songs, so many tours. Dan has decided to move on to other things and say goodbye to his time in Neo, but he'll always be a huge part of how we arrived at this point here today, and we're so grateful to have shared in so many special moments together over the years. Norjevil, new record coming this year, new single out. Let's check this one out, because I've not heard this new Norjevil single. And it was not long ago that I was talking about this band, so let's give this a spin.
Course
don't know about that. Those drums are marginally more imaginative than the Archgoat song. I don't like the vocals. The riff sounds to me like I've heard it a million times. It might be that the rest of the record is worth listening to, but that song isn't really doing anything for me. And it also shows you, and I've spoken to loads of people about this, I may even have spoken about it on the podcast, but it shows you how the bar has been lifted in metal. Like, I can imagine me hearing that song 10 years ago and going, this is fucking brilliant. Can't imagine that black metal's going to go... Okay, not that far. I was going to say, I can't imagine that black metal's going to get any better than this. That maybe overstating the point somewhat. But, I think that something like that coming out now is like a, tier 2, tier 3 band at best. Especially when, you are competing against the likes of the Young Bucks, like Au Dessus that we listened to earlier. Nordjevil is being released on indie music. Now, what I don't understand is how do the guys at Indie Recordings listen to that, go, this is great, I want to release it, listen to the new Trivax, and that doesn't have a label yet. It makes no fucking sense to me. I can list down those bands that I think it's absolutely criminal that they've not been signed yet. Quell, Master's Call, Trivax, Born Ultra, Aldophoria. The list goes on and on and on. And those bands are all a fucking million times better than this. So, no disrespect to anyone from Nordjevil, but I think that song sucks. I don't really think there's a huge amount else that is worth talking about on Metal Storm, so it might be time for us to make our way to the Democrat's Guide to Rock Music, Blabbermouth, where I'm sure expert analysis on geopolitics as well as the global pandemic, which actually I was about to say global pandemic, but it doesn't really exist anymore because ever since the war, no one's talking about it. By the way, on that topic, if you've not listened to it yet, make sure that you listen to the Majid Nawaz episode on Joe Rogan. Absolutely brilliant stuff. I've been following Majid's work for a very long time, actually. I used to exchange messages with him on Twitter, like way back, like 2013, 2014. And it really just started as me kind of messaging him and just saying, really inspired by what you do. You're a brave guy. Like your commentary on etc., etc. And then I discovered more of him. But the episode he's just done with Joe Rogan was fucking spectacular. Anyway, right, let's see what's on here. Venom Incorporated performed Venom's entire black metal album at Germany's Keep It True festival. Venom, to me, are one of those bands that has one incredible song for every 8 extraordinarily shit tracks. Kirk Weinstein confirms Down Covers EP is still in the works. So this was something that I can't remember if he spoke to me about it when I met him or where I last heard about it, but I know that there was an acoustic EP that was going to be done in the vein of the Where I'm Going track off of Down 2, which is fantastic. So I don't know whether or not this is maybe it, but anyway, it says here, Down guitarist Kirk Weinstein has confirmed to Ghost Cult that the band is still planning to release a 6-song EP of obscure cover songs. A lot of people have been asking about that yet. That's true, he said, as transcribed by blabbermouth.net. We just need to get our butts in a room together and pick the shit out and down it up a little bit, so to speak. But that's the only thing in the future as of now, but it's something. As for the possibility of Down staging the previously announced anniversary tour celebrating the 25th anniversary of the band's 1995 released classic debut album, Nola, after the trek was sidelined due to the global pandemic, Kirk said, I sure hope so. We have shows booked in Dallas, and I believe we have one in Atlanta, and we have Welcome to Rockville. We have a festival in Florida, as far as I know. One of my top 5 favorite experiences at a live show was seeing Down, and they did, I can't remember what song they played, but they left the guitar ringing, and then the lights went down and smoke started blowing on stage, and this familiar bass line started playing, and you'll know the bass line in a second when I butcher my Phil Anselmo impression of him singing. But Philip stepped up to the microphone and he went, "Been dazed and confused." And that entire crowd lost their shit. As rightfully they should, but it was just so fucking cool. It was just absolutely incredible. Still gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. System of Downs, John Dolmayan says COVID-19 is and always has been about money. I agree. Well, it's always been about a power grab and about control. There's now talk that a Freedom of Information Act revealed that only 17,000 people died of COVID, of pure COVID, not with COVID, in the UK, and they have been telling us since for the longest time that it was 158,000. I think there's a lot of stuff that's still going to come out about this, and I'm not going to talk about it again because I've spoken about it on the podcast before, but it's bullshit. I think it was a pretext to a lot of things that they got too much resistance to that they could really kind of push through with it. So, anyways, new Fear Factory singer is Italian, claims ex-Night Rage frontman Anthony Homolainen. He's probably Italian because the Italian currency, or actually the euro, isn't strong as it used to be. So Dino thinks that he can get him at cut price. But D. Snyder absolutely approves of Ukrainians using "we're not going to take it" as their battle cry. Fuck Russia. I think if D. Snyder were to be parachuted into parachuted into Moscow, parachuted into the Kremlin to go and give Vladimir one of his lectures, or Vladimir will be begging for mercy within the hour. And I know I said something similar about Joy Behar, who, by the way, Joy Behar of The View, one of the biggest buffoons on the face of the planet, was bemoaning on, I think, Thursday's episode, the fact that she might not be able to go on her vacation to Italy anymore because there's a war on in the Ukraine. And of course, I've kind of been expecting, the professors, Randy Blythe, Corey Taylor, Sebastian Bach, D. Snyder, to give us their expert analysis. But I do hope that they know that the bar has been set awfully high as far as pathetic, fucking pointless, narcissistic self-indulgence or celebrity self-indulgence is concerned. And I will let me lay this on you. So this imbecile, who is a former, so her name is Annalyn McCord. She is a former actress in 90210. I don't watch the show and I don't know who the fuck she is. However, I did hear this on Ben Shapiro's podcast, and I had to share it with all of you since I know that not all of you listen to young Ben. But yeah, this is I'm gonna shut up and I'm gonna play this for as long as I can go without throwing up, and then I'll tell you what I think of it straight after.
Dear President Vladimir Putin, I'm so sorry that I was not your mother. If I was your mother, you would have been so loved, held in the arms of joyous light. Never would the stories plight the world unfurled before our eyes, a pure demise of nations sitting peaceful under a night sky. If I was your mother, the world would have been warm. So much laughter and joy, and nothing would harm. I can't imagine the stain, the soul-stealing pain that the little boy you must have seen and believed, and the formulation of thought quickly taught that you lived in a cruel, unjust world.
I mean, I can only take so much. But here's what I always think when I see a video like that, right? What are the steps that you took to get to the place that you thought, you know what, I'm going to really make a difference here. I don't know if she wrote the poem. She presents it with so much gusto. I'm sure she did. I'm going to write this insipid drivel, and then I'm going to recite it with all the fucking fake emotion of a grade 6 trying to compete in a, I don't know, fucking arts competition. And that suddenly he's going to listen to it and he's going to go, oh my God, call back the troops, call back the men. The war is over. Annalyn McCord has changed my mind. I mean, that really is a sad indictment on, I personally think, the state of Western civilization in general. That people can be so fucking narcissistic that they could put out something like that into the public and be proud of it and kind of, post it on Twitter, hit tweet, and then sit back and wait for the dopamine hit to come in from all the likes that they're going to get from it. It's no different to Gal Gadot reminding everybody that heaven doesn't exist with her cover of Imagine right as they're burying their loved ones at the height of the pandemic. I mean, just fucking staggering. And the thing is, she's not alone, which is why, you might hear me talk about the decline of Western civilization, although I think all of you probably agree with me on this, but the decline of Western civilization, and you go, maybe to the uninitiated, they might listen and they might go, oh, that Jackie's taking a little far. No, I'm fucking not. Go on to TikTok. Or don't even go onto TikTok, because, you shouldn't be registered on that fucking pederast morass that TikTok is, but go on to the Libs of TikTok account on Instagram or on Twitter, and then you tell me that these people are in any way sane or normal or, would have been seen as anything other than fucking an absolute walking joke 20 years ago. But now we're to celebrate their mental illness, which they parade to the rest of the public. Anyway, Slipknot's Corey Taylor on Pantera's Vulgar Display of Power. It's still one of my favorite albums. I'm actually surprised that Vulgar Display of Power is getting so much love from people. I fucking think it's brilliant. I think it's one of the best and most influential records ever. I think I actually spoke with Trevor about it which will be on next week's episode. But the obviously, there's a bit of a backlash against it, because once upon a time they used the Confederate flag on stage, and Dimebag Darrell's guitar had the Confederate flag on. They're basically Nazis, and if you listen to them, you are Hitler. I do love Pantera, and I'll never stop. And this millennial backlash against Pantera can fucking do one. Ex-Motley Crue singer John Corabi. Hey, bros. People have lost all sense of reasoning. Fuck Trump. Most of Deicide's next album has been written, says guitarist Taylor Nordberg. When it comes to death metal, there's three tiers, in my opinion. There is tier 1, which is the bands that push forward the genre with every release. Bands like Immolation, Ulcerate, Nile, Dying Fetus. Then there's tier 2, which are the bands that are enjoyable and that, do stuff that not necessarily the most innovative, but what they do exceptionally well. Cannibal Corpse is one such band. And then there's bands that just do stuff that's total throwaway, maybe technically it's good, but it's here today, gone tomorrow. And I'm sad to say, as much as I think the first 3 Deicide records are the 3 of the best death metal records ever recorded, with the exception possibly of The Stench of Redemption, I don't really think that there's anything that Deicide has done since Once Upon a Cross that is not tier 3. Okay, so I was going to say, I do like this. The headline I'm looking at, in case you're listening to this and not gazing upon my magnificence on YouTube, is Corey Taylor's acoustic cover version of Red Rider's Lunatic Fringe. Now, will I or won't I play this? Because I might get blocked, but I fucking love this song and I do want to hear it. I'm going to give it a whirl. I'm probably going to do like 20-second bites. And then I'll tell you guys what I think, and I'll wrap it up on this one because I know I've been going a bit long again. But yeah, I love this song. And as much as I rag on Corey Taylor on this podcast, one thing that he does very, very well is there are certain covers I've heard him do exceptionally. Ain't Talking About Love by Van Halen being one of them. If you go on YouTube, you can see a couple of examples of him doing it, and it's all awesome. But anyways, let's give this a spin, and let's hope I don't get fucking wrapped over the knuckles by the copyright police. That's some good guitar in. Definitely good guitar in for high-end hi-fi. I'll have to crank up the old speakers in a little bit. And by the way, for those of you guys that are interested, and I still get questions about hi-fi, so some of you clearly are, I might possibly be upgrading those Bowers & Wilkins 800 D3 speakers to something that is so fucking badass. It needs its own spot in the dictionary under the phrase badass. I'll tell all of you if it actually happens because I don't want to jinx it. But yeah, what I may possibly be getting is absolutely fucking awesome.
1, 2, 3, 4. Lunatic French, I know you're out there. You're in hiding. You hold your meetings. I can hear you coming.
I like it. As I said, I fucking love that song. I think part of why I love that song is my one of my favorite MMA men, Dan Henderson. He used to walk into that track. But yeah, I like that tune. As I said, I hate on Slipknot a lot on this podcast. I hate on Corey Taylor an awful lot, but even I have to put up my hands and say that is pretty fucking badass. And on that note, I hope you guys thought the news segment this week was pretty badass. Let's wrap this turkey up. Thank you for making it all the way to the very end of the podcast. I am back next week with Trevor Ports of Arborea. Great conversation, which I am very excited to share with all of you. I'm going to play out with a track by Drudkh. I spoke about them earlier on the podcast. This is off of the Rarities compilation they put out some time ago called A Few Lines in Archaic Ukrainian, put out by Season of Mist, of course. And the track is called Golden Horse. I will see all of you bad motherfuckers again next week.
Goodbye.